This meeting of the Starkville Board of Aldermen will now come to order. Please rise for the sake of the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have before you a copy of the written agenda, and I have one potential revision, if somebody would like to add it, and it would go under sanitation at the very end of the agenda prior to executive session. That's item 11K on page 6. And it would be the consideration of changing the standard hours of laborers in the sanitation department, moving them up 1 hour earlier to accommodate abnormally high temperatures. And I can elaborate a little bit if y'all think this is something that might go on consent to keep from having, I guess, a longer discussion later. This is related to two of our sanitation workers passing out from heat exhaustion, and the proposal would be to, until the heat breaks some, bump the standard hours of operation up from 6 to 2 as opposed to 7 to 3, which is what they are currently. This is action that requires board approval, and the customers are not going to notice any difference in service. As a matter of fact, service would be delivered probably a little more promptly in some cases.
Mr. Mayor, what's your wording for this consent agenda item?
Consideration of changing the standard hours of laborers in the sanitation department from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. in order to accommodate abnormally high temperatures.
Effective immediately until further order of the board.
Yes.
Okay, I'll put that in there.
Yeah.
Effective immediately until further order of the board.
Yeah, we'll tack that on to the end.
Okay, that's in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that is the language, I have no objection to going to consent if you got get all that language in there. Any other change to the agenda, Mr. Mayor?
Let me make sure I've got this one. Do you want me to read it again, or are you comfortable with tacking effective immediately until a further order of the board?
Yes, sir, that's fine, that's fine.
Okay, so motion, proposed revision by Alderman Perkins has been made to add to the agenda under item 11K on page 6, consideration of changing the hours of laborers in the sanitation department from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. in order to accommodate abnormally high temperatures effective immediately until further order of the board. And was that proposed revision to place it on consent?
I have no objection to it. I don't know about the rest of the board, but I think it's reasonable for consent.
Okay, is there any objection to placing that matter on the agenda and on the consent agenda? Any objection? Any objection? All right, seeing none, please note the change to your agenda. Are there any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Alderman Cicerone.
I have one, and my apologies to anybody who might have come out for this, but if there's no objection, I'd like to pull the fourth public hearing on amending the sign ordinance from tonight's agenda, and I would like to amend item XG, consideration of amending the Starkville sign ordinance. I'd like to amend that to recommend the formation of a committee to further review the sign amendments to the sign ordinance and present a final amendment to the sign ordinance no later than the first meeting in September.
Mr. Mayor,
This was something that started with changing to address one issue, and it's expanded, and I think because the scope of the changes have expanded significantly, it's appropriate that we establish a committee to look at that and be sure that it's everything we want it to be.
Mr. Mayor, might be recognized.
You may.
Mr. Mayor, this is the fourth public hearing. I am interested in knowing, and not that I'm opposed to it, but I am interested in knowing what is the need for a committee and what is the further scope that we're gonna be looking at as opposed to what's currently on the table.
Alderman Sistrunk?
I don't know that there will be any further scope. There may be a reduction in scope. I just feel that we need to step back and make sure we're making all the changes we want to make at once. And I feel like we do need a committee to address that.
And if I might speak to that
Mr.
for a
Mayor,
second.
Let me say one other thing while I have the floor. Just one further recognition. I am interested in knowing specifically, and not that I'm against, I want to know specifically what is the additional matter that is seemingly arising here as to any of the board members to further consider. If we're going to have a committee, there must be some thought process, some thinking, some inclination to add some of the item. Not that it's good or bad, but I'm interested in knowing exactly what is the mindset, what is it that the committee gonna look at, what else are we looking at? Normally, we don't exceed 4 hearings, and I'm not against it, but I want to know where are we headed? What is it that the committee's gonna look at? That's what I want to know, and maybe a good idea, but I'm interested in knowing that before we pull this from the agenda as to where are we going? What is it that may not be included? You know, we have given a lot of debate, and maybe something that's meritorious, but I'm interested in knowing what the mindset is. Obviously, there's something else that, that's being thought of, being considered on this matter. So if you would share that and just let us know what the thought process is here.
Yeah, let me share for just a second, and then Alderman Parker, let you speak for a second. I have weighed in on this one some myself, and I think part of the issue is what the proposed amendment for the sign ordinance is started as a fairly narrow review of a single issue, particularly directional signs for organizations in the sign ordinance. That discussion evolved over the months that this issue has been being discussed, and you have an amendment that sweeps much broader in scope than what you originally had. And really and truly, it's the type of amendment process that we would typically have a committee vet to get a more well-rounded discussion prior to coming to the board. And I think that's part of the reason you've had 4 public hearings. In conversation with some of the aldermen that have been working on this, have sensed that it's probably grown into an animal that is larger than what it originally was, and probably the best thing to do with it at this point is to step back and go to a committee to fully vet out what's in there. Alderman Parker.
And Alderman Perkins, to answer your question, one of the concerns, because I initially opened this up for directional signages for certain people, and it has grown, and the section 18, the amortization of non-conforming signs, is what I personally wasn't comfortable with. The first 2 public hearings, that was nowhere in the ordinance, and then it showed up the third, or maybe the second and third. But I just didn't want anybody to feel like this was trying to be slipped in without enough public input, because you're basically telling everybody on Highway 12. I mean, and 7 years is a long period of time, but you're telling everybody on Highway 12, you gotta have a new sign in 7 years.
So
And that's a
this-
pretty major expense.
So this basically your thought process of have the committee process?
Well, Alderman Sistrunk offered the committee
Okay.
process to review it, which I do not have an issue with or a problem
Right.
with.
And Mr. Mayor, one last thing, and I appreciate the gentleman from 3. Mr. Mayor, the only thing I was asking, I'm not against anything here. I just want to make sure that I have full knowledge as to what we're about to consider. Normally, when a committee is asked, whenever there is a request to further study something, there is something within the mind as to what is to be considered. And it seems like that something is not being shared, and maybe there may be a misperception here, but normally that's the case. It may be an exception here. And I just want to make sure when we ask the board to have a committee process, I'm not against the committee process. I just want to make sure that we're given the benefit of all the information as to, well, this is what came up, and then I think we need to consider this, and, you know, that's good to share that, you know, we all can start thinking in the direction, but I just want to make sure that, that we're shared that, and of course, you said that it's going to a bigger animal, but, and it's still didn't answer my question, so I guess I just have to wait until that comes on the table, but thank you very much.
Okay, the proposed revision from Alderman Sistrunk is striking item 8A on page 2, which would have been the fourth public hearing on proposed changes to the sign ordinance, and amending item 10G on page 3 to read a consideration of the formation of a committee to review the sign ordinance and present findings to the board no later than September 1st, 2010. Is that the proposed
Is that
revision?
our first meeting in September? I'm not sure what that date is.
Yeah, no, I'm
It is.
sorry. Yeah, the first meeting of September, no later than the first meeting of September. Is that the proposed
It
revision?
is. I'm sorry.
All right, is there any objection to that proposed revision to the agenda? Any objection? Any objection? All right, seeing none, please note that the change to your agenda. Are there any further proposed revisions? Alderman Corey.
I have two potential items for our consent agenda if there are no objections. The first one is board business, item E, consideration of appointing a staff support person to the Historic Preservation Commission and the Stormwater Hearing Board. The recommendation provided in our packet was for the city planner to be on the Historic Preservation Committee and the city engineer to be on the Stormwater Hearing Board. I have no problems with that recommendation. With that recommendation, would ask that be moved to consent.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Corey is to place item 10E on the consent agenda with the appointed staff person for the Historic Preservation Committee to be the city planner, Ben Griffith, and the appointed staff person to the Stormwater Hearing Board be the city engineer, Edward Kemp. Is that your proposed revision?
It is.
All right, is there any objection to placing that matter on the consent agenda? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change to your agenda.
The other item was item J under board business, authorization to purchase a not to exceed amount of $500 for paint for the purposes of repairing some signposts. The idea, I was the one who put that on there. The idea was I was going to get some volunteers to help in painting the signpost where we have had those new signs put up. And so that's just sort of a volunteer-led project, and I was hoping the city would be willing to support that through providing the paint for it.
And are you proposing to place that on consent?
Yes.
All right, the proposed revision is to place item 10J on page 4, request of authorization to purchase paint for the purpose of painting the signposts that hold the historic district signs not to exceed the amount of $500 on the consent agenda. Any objection?
I've got a question.
All right, we've got an objection, so let's just wait for the full discussion. That won't go on consent. Any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Alderman Vaughn.
On public hearing, I'd like to move J1 from public hearing from the consent to be explained. Northeast of Starkville. Page number 6. Public service J1.
That's the request for approval to advertise for bids and materials and services to install fire mains and hydrants in northeast Starkville.
Right, remove from the consent, please.
Okay.
Services.
That item has been removed from the consent agenda. Are there any further? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, has item number D under Roman numeral 10, board business been removed, consideration appointing a board liaison, no Alderman Corey removed E. What about item D? They're like that's an item for, I'm concerned, can go to the consent agenda.
We would just need to know who those board liaisons were going to be.
Yeah, does anybody know that? I mean, I'm just trying to save some time here, but if the board wants to discuss it, that's fine. I just thought someone can move, but we can keep there. Obviously, nobody knows.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. We can just keep there.
I'm fine with that. I'd like to be the tree board. I don't know if anybody else wants to mention.
All right. If we can do this quickly,
Okay.
we can move it to consent. It's going to be a larger discussion.
I'd like to be on the Historic Preservation Liaison.
Okay.
You need somebody from Stormwater. Who wants to be on
Stormwater.
Eric Parker, so it's consent.
It's Parker with Stormwater. All right, so the proposed revision is to place item 10D on page 3 on the consent agenda, and that would be to appoint a board liaison to the Tree Advisory Board, who would be Jeremiah Dumas, a board liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, who would be Richard Corey, and a board liaison to the Stormwater Hearing Board, who would be Eric Parker. Is that the proposed revision, Alderman Perkins?
Yes, sir.
All right, is there any objection to placing that on the consent agenda? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change to your agenda.
Mr. Mayor, one last thing. Do we already know who wants to be on the municipal complex? We need to discuss that. On, real quickly, under mayor's business, or we need to discuss that?
We may be able to do that. The interest that I am aware of that has been expressed is by 3 of you, and that is Perkins, Dumas, and Corey. I don't know if there are others of you that are interested. If there are more than 3, then we would probably need to have a discussion, but if it's just the 3 of you that are interested, then we could go forth and do that. One note I would like to make is, I would like this to be a 3 board members plus mayor committees. I would like to be on this one as well.
Who did you say that was?
It was Perkins, Dumas, and Corey.
And let's add the CEO to it.
Okay, plus CAO and mayor. So Alderman Perkins is the proposed revision to place item 9E on page 3 on the consent agenda, and that would be the appointment of a Board of Aldermen Municipal Complex Committee consisting of Alderman Perkins, Dumas, and Corey, and Wiseman, and Chief Administrative Officer Lynn Spruill on the consent agenda. Is that the proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change to your agenda. All right, any further proposed revisions? Alderman Vaughn.
Page number 4, on the Budget Committee Report, H. Consideration of organization for the Building Department to issue a 15-day notice for the expiration of temporary certificate of occupancy. Move that to consent.
Okay, the proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to move item 10H on page 4 to the consent agenda, which is the consideration of the authorization for the building department to issue a 15-day notice of the expiration of temporary COs. Yeah. Any objection to that proposed revision? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change on your agenda. Any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Are there any other proposed revisions to the agenda? Any further proposed revisions? All right, seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as modified would be in order.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You have the consent agenda before you as revised. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. The first matters of business you have before you are the request for consideration of minutes from June 1st and June 15th. The first matter is the request for approval of the June 1st, 2010 minutes.
So moved.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to approve of the minutes from the regular board meeting of the Board of Aldermen held on June 1st, 2010. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Next matter on the agenda is the request for consideration of the approval of the June 15th, 2010 minutes.
Move.
Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to approve of the minutes from the recess meeting of the Board of Aldermen held on June 15th, 2010. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll now move to mayor's comments, and I've got several this evening. The first, I'm gonna ask for some help on, from Jack Wallace, who is either the new president of ESGR or about to be the new president of ESGR. And I want him to, I guess, brief us on a resolution of support for our city employees who are members of the Guard and Reserve, which we have already approved as a city because it went on the consent agenda. And then after Mr. Wallace has made his comments, I would like for us to sign, for everybody that is willing and wants to, the resolutions that you have in your pocket so he can collect them and add them to his stack. Mr. Wallace?
Thank you, Mayor. Board, I appreciate the time to be here very much. I'm here representing the Employee Support of Guard and Reserve of the state of Mississippi. We are the Department of Defense organization, and we represent the men and women who belong to the Air National Guard, Army National Guard, Army Reserve, Navy Reserve, Air Force Reserve, Marine Reserve, and Coast Guard Reserve. Lately, we've had a push by the Department of Defense that they would like for us to key in on municipalities, particularly mayors and boards of aldermen, for statements of support. And what I had done for you, have already done for you, is gotten the Department of Defense to send me a statement of support with your name emblazoned on it. That's presumptuous, I know, and this is totally a volunteer thing, but I wanted to be sure and have your name correct, etc. But that document says that you support the men and women of the Guard and Reserve. You understand there is a federal law that protects them. And then further, for you to understand that each day about 52% of our armed forces worldwide are Guard and Reserves. You may or may not know that every day an aircraft flies out of Jackson, Mississippi, and it has a Guard or reservist captain or colonel on it flying that aircraft. These are people who work in your hometown and everyone else's hometown. So it's imperative that we support our current military structure, and that's what our job is, to deal with some of the residue that occurs when these men and women are activated and have to deal with matters worldwide. So it's a totally volunteer thing. What we would appreciate you doing is to sign it, date it, display it somewhere that you would like to have it in your office or home, wherever you'd like to have it. And you've got a card about that tall, about 4 inches tall, with some information we're requesting. If you would fill it out, leave it in the mayor's office, I'll pick them up tomorrow where you won't be encumbered with it tonight. If that'll be all right, Mr. Mayor, and they won't have to worry about it tonight. But what we will do is we would turn you into the Department of Defense, ESGR.net website. You'll be listed as a supporter of the men and women of the military. And we will gladly show that Starkville, Mississippi is one of the first mayors and boards to come on board, no pun intended, to support the Guard and Reserve initiative that we have. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. I will be the new state chairman or president of this organization beginning in September the 1st. And it's an honor to do it. And like I say, I'd like for my hometown to be one of the first that's posted as being a supporter of the Guard and Reserve. Any questions or comments? And if you would, we'll have a camera available. If you would gather behind the mayor there, I'd like to get a photo op. We'll send it forward to Washington as well. And if you don't object to that, I'd like to do that. If you do, then I would understand.
Let me make a few brief ones, and then I would like to read for the public the resolution that we're signing, then we'll proceed to the photo op. And I recently was fortunate through Jack to have an experience with ESGR that was very beneficial experience to me, and I would recommend to any of you that are in here that are employers to go, if you ever get the opportunity, on what's called a boss lift that the ESGR does several times a year, is my understanding. And it is designed to educate people that employ members of the Guard and Reserve on what those members of the Guard and Reserve do when they go for training, and if they are subsequently deployed for active duty. It was indeed an eye-opening experience we have 10 employees in the city workforce that are with the Guard or Reserve. And I can tell you that all of us, I guess collectively, as mayor and board being the employers of those individuals, should be very, very proud of the work they do, and also should view the training that they get and the experience that they have in the Guard and Reserve as a big benefit for that employee with the city, because I think it is something that definitely translates to the work that they do for the city of Starkville. And also members of the public as well, as ultimately they are your employees as well. So I guess in brief, I would like to say thanks, and I will read everybody the statement that we'll be signing. We recognize the National Guard and Reserve are essential to the strength of our nation and well-being of our communities. In the highest American tradition, the patriotic men and women of the Guard and Reserve serve voluntarily in an honorable and vital profession. They train to respond to their community and their country in a time of need. They deserve the support of every segment of our society. If these volunteer forces are to continue to serve our nation, increased public understanding is required of the essential role of the Guard and Reserve in preserving our national security. Therefore, we join other employers in pledging that we fully recognize, honor, and enforce the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. Our managers and supervisors will have the tools they need to effectively manage those employees who serve in the Guard and Reserve. And we will continually recognize and support our community service members and their families in peace, in crisis, and in war.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you will, I guess whoever's taking the picture, just tell us what you need. And Jack, you want to come back here so you're in the picture?
I'll take my chair too if they need
Is there anyone who objects?
to. Yes, that'll be good. That'll be good. I'm not objecting, I just the Board of Aldermen.
I think the board.
Y'all just gather in, sitting, standing, however you're most comfortable in a way that Tanya can fit everybody in the picture.
Can you get in there, all right? Come on. Thank you, board and Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And I would next like to read a proclamation that I have made for Disability Awareness Day, which is officially this Saturday, but I am officially making the proclamation now. And I'll also tell you a little bit about the events that are going to be going on in our community to celebrate Disability Awareness Day this Saturday at the conclusion of the proclamation. This is a proclamation by the Mayor of Starkville, Mississippi. Fair access to public facilities is a fundamental right of every American, including the 3,200 plus people in Starkville living with disability. Accessibility in our community provides access to jobs, health care, and retailers, helping to maximize their independence and potential and allowing them to achieve their dreams. As Americans, we possess a range of opportunities to make the most of our talents and succeed in community life. Those with disabilities are entitled to the same opportunities. During Disability Awareness Day, we recommit ourselves to implementing effective policies and practices that increase integration and participation of persons with disabilities into all areas of economic, political, and community life. In the past 4 years, we have made great strides toward providing equal access in the city of Starkville, but much work remains to be done. As part of that continuing effort, we must seek to provide access and opportunities for individuals with disabilities. Only then can Americans with disabilities achieve full participation in the community and reach the height of their ambition. Our Board of Aldermen is committed to promoting positive change for every Starkville citizen, including those with disabilities. The federal government and its contractors are leading the way by implementing effective policies and practices that increase opportunities and help people with disabilities achieve their full potential. We must ensure that they have access to the support and services they need to succeed in being as independent as possible. We are to build we are to build a world free from unnecessary barriers, stereotypes, and discrimination. Each day, Americans with disabilities play a critical role in forging and shaping our identity as a city. Their contributions touch us all through personal experience or through that of a family member, neighbor, friend, or colleague. We go stronger as a city when Americans feel the dignity conferred by having the ability to participate in our community. Today, we rededicate ourselves to fostering an inclusive culture that welcomes the skills and talents of all citizens. Now, therefore, I, Parker Wiseman, Mayor of Starkville, Mississippi, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim July 24, 2010 as Disability Awareness Day. I call on all Americans to celebrate the contributions of individuals with disabilities to our workplaces and communities, and to promote the integration of individuals with disabilities to create a better, more inclusive city. And July 24th is, of course, this Saturday, when our community will be officially recognizing Disability Awareness Day. And there are events planned throughout the day that will begin at 8:30 in the morning at the community market, and will run throughout the course of the morning. I would encourage all of you that are available to come out and participate in an eye-opening series of activities that our Commission on Disability has worked hard to plan. And Alderman Sistrunk is our board liaison to the commission, and is Whitney here?
She was going to try to be here.
So I'll ask them to supplement my comments in any way they see fit at this point.
It is the 20th anniversary, and it is an important event in our country's history and our city's history. So I too encourage everyone, especially the Board of Aldermen and city employees, to come out and take part in some of this. It's definitely an opportunity to educate yourself further.
And I guess, too, would just like to say that I'm very proud of the work that this commission has led in our city, and the positive changes that have been made as a result of your advocacy. You are very, very important to the betterment of this community, and we appreciate what you volunteer your time to do. Whitney, would you like to say anything?
We do have a couple of things that people in the community can sign up for. There's registration for, it's kind of similar to the Riverburg on campus. Get under the hearing and answer the NATO sirens. We sign up to get emergency weather information through text or email. There's also a program called Are You Okay, where someone can call you to do it by yourself. And someone checks in every day to make sure that you're doing every day. And then the sanitation department's going to be there. If no documentation that you need help, they'll actually pick up your garbage or recycling at the check your back door. So you don't have to take your trash to the road. And there's also a program where you can sign up. You have a sticker on your window at your home, and then the fire department has to come to your house. They can see the sticker and the code. And it can say how many people in your home are elderly or have a disability, or how many children are in your home. And so it helps emergency and rescue personnel to be able to locate you more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, and we look forward to seeing everybody this Saturday at the community market. Finally, I would like to introduce our newest addition to the city workforce. Is Michael Howard here? Michael Howard is a new maintenance worker one in the street department. He is originally from McCool, Mississippi, and attended Louisville High School. Previously, Michael owned his own sheetrock business for 6 years. Michael has been married for the past 16 years and has 3 daughters, ages 18, 15, and 11. In Michael's spare time, he enjoys hunting, fishing, trapping, and working on old trucks. Please join me in welcoming Michael to the city workforce. Thank you, Michael. And that's all of my comments. Are there any comments from the members of the board? Oh, we have, I'm sorry, we have one listed. We've got the presentation of the Employee of the Month from Alderman Parker.
Thank you. Mayor. This month is our third month of Employee of the Month program. The city of Starkville has our own Billy the Exterminator, and her name is Sarah Hankins. Sarah is our Employee of the Month for June 2010. She has worked for the city of Starkville since May 2007 as the Animal Control Officer for the Starkville Police Department. Officer Hankins is responsible for rescuing pets, strays, and keeping the community safe from dangerous animals. Since her hiring, Officer Hankins has been a positive inspiration both publicly and internally for our Animal Control unit. She demonstrated her willingness to go the extra mile when she responded to a call regarding a snake. The snake had crawled under the porch of a residence before she could apprehend it. But knowing the snake would make the residents uneasy, Officer Hankins, in the rain, crawled underneath the porch and captured the large snake, which in turn coiled around her arm. The city of Starkville has one of the best animal control units in the state of Mississippi, and one of the reasons is the dedication of Officer Hankins. The city of Starkville and the Starkville Police Department are proud to recognize Officer Sarah Hankins as the Employee of the Month.
Alderman Parker, I can assure everyone the snake was longer than she is tall.
Thank you, Sarah. And just on a side note, when we go to municipal league conferences and visit with officials throughout the state of Mississippi, commonly some of the biggest headaches that are expressed are those involving animal control. And we just do not see the same volume and intensity of those issues here, and I can't help but think that it's because of the work that you and Richard do and how well you do it. So I appreciate everything that you do. All right, are there any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. Any citizen wishing to make comment may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you will be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. Our Vice Mayor Sistron, Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Turner.
The citizens want to thank you for completing Jefferson Street. The citizens have a few concerns, and that is our Carver Drive. The people that live on Carver Drive have given up and said that the city don't care. Curfew order. It's hot, and the last thing that citizens need is to be aggravated. Now the older people, we've been wanting them to pull out the broom handle, mop, bullwhip the lad to contain till the police get there. But it's hot, and we need a curfew to try to keep down problem. And thirdly, the bike helmet. We have a lot of children riding in the street, no helmet, hat, don't know the danger of it. And lastly, I have some pictures from Lafayette Street, the condition that it's in, and I would like my pictures back.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Are there any further citizen comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and board members, for allowing me the opportunity to address you. My name is Carol Moss Reed. I live at 801 Shadowwood Lane, which is in Ward 3. Before I begin, though, I would like to congratulate the mayor and board on your first year in office. I read with interest the article in Sunday's paper about the accomplishments of this first year. And one thing I noticed was that all of your decisions, even though they were not all popular with all of your constituents, were made in what appeared to be the best interest for the citizens of Starkville and for the future of our city. I also noticed in the paper on Sunday that Mr. Mark Smith, interim state CEO for the American Red Cross, and Ms. Paige Roberts, the interim communication director, were on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I can only assume that they are here to tell you that business is as usual with the Oktibbeha County chapter of the American Red Cross. However, some of us in this room tonight would not agree. We would agree that the office is open, but business is not as usual. I'm further guessing that they may tell you that they've responded to 2 fires in the county since the staff and board resigned. Not quite true. Our Vista volunteer responded to the first fire on Self Creek Road. The victims of the fire in Sturgis contacted the Red Cross office themselves. The person from Tupelo covering this office was unable to access all of the materials necessary. So once again, our Vista volunteer was called into service. And I quote her, "I responded to these fires because we told the Board of Supervisors we would continue to meet the needs of our county. But I did not do it in support of the Red Cross, but rather in support of my county." Now, my reason for coming before you tonight is to remind you that a group of your constituents are in the process of forming a nonprofit group that we feel can respond to local disasters in the fastest, most efficient, and most economical way. Our newly formed board of directors is made up of interested citizens, including former Red Cross board members. There has been an ongoing series of changes within the Red Cross organization over the last few years. The latest restructuring of Mississippi being the final straw for the ones of us that had given time, energy, money, and leadership to this chapter for many, many years. Given the magnitude of the proposed changes and the initial apparent disregard for input from the local communities being affected, we felt and still feel that we could better serve our citizens with a grassroots organization rather than to continue to work within a bureaucracy that adds layers to the level of service. I'm not here to ask anything of this board except that you remember we are your constituents. We are the same people with whom you attend church, who you see at the grocery store and at Walmart, who serve on community boards and commissions, and who vote in Starkville and Oktibbeha County. We did not drive in from Jackson or from the coast for the purpose of telling you that everything was as it once had been. And I thank you.
Thank you. Further citizen comments?
Good evening. My name is Michelle Williams. I reside on Park Circle in Starkville, Mississippi in Ward 2. I came to the board meeting July the 6th of this year. I let the mayor and the board know I was being harassed by Starkville Police Department. The latest incident at that time was June the 24th. I typed a 4-page letter, I got it notarized, and I turned it into the mayor's office. At the last meeting, I specifically asked the mayor and the board to investigate my complaint. I asked you, Mayor, along with the board, to investigate yourselves, not to turn it over to Starkville Police Department to investigate whom I have the complaint against. It's very disturbing to me that today I received a letter, certified mail from Starkville Police Department from Captain John Thomas telling me that Tom Robertson found my complaint unfounded. Mind you, this is the same Tom Robertson that told me there was no internal affairs division that I can file a complaint with when I originally wanted to file my complaint. Just as of July the 18th, I was stopped and arrested by someone in an unmarked car with regular clothes on. I later find out this is Officer Henson. They tell me his Starkville Police Department tells me he is a special officer. What is a special officer? What makes him special? What is different for his job duties than other police officers at Starkville Police Department? This special officer at the police department asked me, was the car in Josie Jordan's name? Is she black or white? When I told him I didn't see what that had to do with anything, he told me, while you're trying to be smart, I found this in your floorboard and you're being charged with it, and held up a silver box. He told me I was being charged with possession of paraphernalia. I asked him what that was. I told him I've never seen it before, I know it's not mine, and I know my fingerprints are not on it. Not to mention, the regular clothes police civilian that pulled me over, he gave me a ticket. I didn't see a badge. He didn't tell me his name. He gave me a ticket for running a red light. Not to mention, when we go to court, I'm going to plead not guilty. I'm anxious to see which one of these three is going to say they Mirandized me, because it never took place. I was simply told, you understand you're under arrest for DUI refusal. Do you understand? As you can see, these incidents are steadily occurring. I am to the point my civil rights are being violated. I have not only called your office, Mayor, but I've also called the Attorney General's office, and I've spoken with Keith Benson, Chief Investigator. I've called Tyrone Ellis, the state representative, this morning. I left a message with him. Joanne, his assistant, is going to have him to call me back. I also left a message with the American Civil Liberties Union, and I'm waiting on the ACLU to get back with me. So I'm going to ask you, Mayor, along with the board, one more time to please do an investigation of these matters yourself. Not turn it over to the department that I have the complaint against. I'm just going to ask one more time. And I
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Are there any further citizen comments?
Good evening. My name is Ventrice Reeves, and I'm a resident of Greta Lane. And I have a question for the board, Ms. Sistrunk in particular, as she's my alder person. What plans are in the works as far as the pavement of that road? We've been annexed into the city, I guess, about 14 years now, and still have yet to even receive all city services. The road's still not paved. You know, that is a discussion that's been held before. And recently, the work that was done at the airport, the road was shored up, so it's in better shape than what it had been. But it was shored up so the heavy trucks that were doing work on the runway at the airport could use it. And in the meantime, the portion that was actually paved up near Summit, those heavy trucks have broken that up. So that needs to be repaired as well. Thank you.
Is this the road behind the vacant dealership?
It runs,
Yes, it is.
runs parallel
Runs
to the
parallel
airport.
to the airport.
And I will say that as part of this budget cycle, the city has been reviewing the services that are not currently being provided to Greta Lane, Bluefield, other annexed areas from that 98 annexation. They're going to present to us a list of what those services are, along with the cost of what it's going to take to extend those services. And then this board will make a decision about what can be provided.
And will that include information about the paving of the road?
The paving will be part of the overall assessment. However, the very first priorities are going to be extending sewer and fire protection to the 1998 annexation area. This is something that's a priority for me, and I feel it's a priority for the board as well. Now, the difficult aspect of it is the cost feasibility portion of it, which will be part of the budgetary process. But for everyone in the 1998 annex area, not currently receiving the full complement of services, you will get a full review, and we'll have an answer from the board as to whether it's economically feasible to provide.
Okay. We've been waiting patiently. Hopefully, we won't have to wait much longer.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. Any further citizen comments?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board. My name is Ben Wilson. I am a resident of 110 Mill Street, over where the university and the complex is. They're talking about converting it to condos. And I have a reason and a complaint about this thing, about converting it. First reason is the citizens in the residential areas over there, the citizens of Starkville. And the residents was over there, it's mostly senior citizens now, they're getting older. And I feel like this will have a negative impact on our neighborhood over on Mill Street. I feel like if they convert these university into these 50 condos, what they're talking about doing, in the near future, or whenever they do this, it's gonna have a negative impact on our neighborhood, because sooner or later, I feel like they're gonna bring students in there. And the students, it's gonna be unsupervised students in there, and the noise on the neighborhood, and the traffic coming through our neighborhood. And it's just gonna be, I think it's just gonna be nothing that would, I would say, would impress or impact us on our neighborhood. I have a petition
Yep.
of, that of the neighborhood, of the citizens of the neighborhood and the residents of the neighborhood. I would like for you all to look over. And I would say I would like for you all to say no to this building expansion and condo expansion or whatever they want to do to the city in our neighborhood of Mill Street and Spring Street. I live within 300 feet of the thing that's finna go on. We have put up with numerous problems over there from the motel, but it wouldn't last this long, that long with the problem of the motel. It would only last, you understand, like a weekend or something. For the last year and a half, we have had most of our trouble. We have had noise of the Hispanics when they started leasing and renting the place out to Hispanics. That's when the noise started occurring down there. But I feel like it just wouldn't be it'd be a negative impact on our neighborhood to turn this university into condos. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
Sir, I've got a question for you. Did you draft this?
Did I draw up this?
Sir?
Did I draw up this?
Did you? Yes, sir.
Well, I was helping to draw it up.
Okay.
And the signatures, I went around and got them in some more guys. All those the registered voters in the neighborhood.
Who drafted this?
Man,
I just wondering who drafted this.
who drafted it? Me and Mr. Nichols.
Okay.
Further citizen comments? Are there any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances. Our first public appearance tonight is by Joan Wilson, presenting the annual budget request from the Heritage Museum. And Ms. Wilson, please accept my apology for rapping the gavel and startling you at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, welcome. I appreciate you having me here tonight, my usual front row seat, so you can't miss that I'm here. But you've gotten in your packets our budget request for the museum for this year, which, after hearing some of these other problems, makes me feel a little insignificant, but the museum is important to Starkville. We've worked real hard this year to increase attendance, to increase exhibits, and of course, our major project this year is honoring World War II veterans, which will culminate in a ceremony or a program August 28th out at the Culver Student Union, honoring all the veterans. Senator Cochran has offered to come speak, so it's going to be pretty big. But anyway, if you look at our budget sheet, it's not good. This last year, Starkville gave us $3,500, and our electric bill for the whole year was $3,594. So we're doing some interesting things at the museum. Outside, we're doing all the groundwork, and you've been there, you saw it. We're going green on the outside, which is the good part. But also, we're going green through the inside because we're cooling and heating our environment. If you were underneath the building, you would be very comfortable because so much of our air conditioning is going out of the building. So then in the winter, the heating is going out. Our electric bill for the month of June was $760, which we can't exist that way. We've had heating and cooling people come and look at what our problem is. The last one came and said we need to get a skinny carpenter to climb up through the cold air return and go up in the attic and box in some of the heating ducts or cooling ducts. Edward Camp has tried to work with me for the last how many years to get this problem solved. So we would appreciate the city helping us look at that because this is the city's history, which is very important to keep, and we have to protect it with proper climate control. But anyway, would you please consider this year's budget request $5,000? Would help us a whole lot and would help you to preserve the history of Starkville. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. And if you'll stay seated for a moment, see if there's any questions or comments from the members of the board. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the board?
Thanks
And
for coming in.
I'll just make a general comment to say thank you for all that you do. Y'all are a very active group and are doing good things for the city.
Thank you. We're trying.
Yes.
Very pleased to be here this evening. I want to start by saying the American Red Cross is here in Oktibbeha County with an office in Starkville. We were here yesterday, we're here today, and we'll be here tomorrow. We're currently looking to staff our offices in Starkville with 2 employees immediately. These employees will continue our core services. Those core services are meeting the emergency immediate needs of families affected by house fire, providing service for our armed forces, providing services to our armed forces, which primarily is to our military personnel overseas as well as their families that are here. We will continue our health and safety instruction like CPR, first aid, water, and safety. We want to continue our community disaster education. We will continue to coordinate our volunteers and work alongside you, Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, in providing services to this city and to the county at large. We have not and will not abandon Starkville. The Red Cross will remain a humanitarian presence in Oktibbeha County, including Starkville, providing services to the people in Starkville and the surrounding communities. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of commentary in the newspaper. But as the CEO for the state of Mississippi, I want to give you my word that the American Red Cross is here and will continue to be here. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, might be recognized.
You may.
You're the CEO of the American Red Cross for the state of Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
What criteria did you utilize in considering as to which officers should be eliminated and arriving at your organizational structure?
I want to first reiterate that we are not closing any offices, either here in Starkville or in the surrounding counties. And the criteria that we've utilized involve a host of issues, including financial assistance, what's the best way that we can provide assistance to the community. But again, we're not closing any offices.
So, but you would agree with me that your actions has negatively impacted the overall operation of the Starkville office in size?
I would say that our actions have not impacted our capacity to deliver services.
My question to you is, has the number of employees for the Starkville, Mississippi office more now, or is it less than it was before your reorganization?
It is currently less, and we are looking to restaff those positions.
Are you going to restaff those positions back to the same level that it was prior to the reorganization?
In fact, we had part-time employees, and now we're looking at full-time employees.
My question is, are you going to staff those employees back to the same number of employees or more prior to your reorganization?
The same number, full-time.
How soon that's going to happen?
As soon as we can go through the hiring process, which is to recruit, to interview, and hire.
And you understand the positive contributions that the staff and volunteers from the Starkville office has tendered over the last several years, including a lot of notable fires, and when I say notable, ones that have gotten a lot of attention here lately, and how their response time, their level of getting contributions, and of course, personally, I would have thought that the Starkville office would have been one that would not have been touched, would not have been reduced in size, would not have been reduced in scope. And I would think that you would affect the staff of one of where there's no productivity and efficiency. So, am I correct that that you should perhaps leave intact those an office where there is efficiency and a high level of productivity?
It is our intention to continue our office here in Starkville.
Okay, and can you give me some assurance as a member of this governing body that and we hear that you want to continue to office here. We want this office back to the same level of staffing. We want it to be at the same level of efficiency and productivity as it was. So when we have to have any major catastrophe or fire or whatever the emergency is, we want a very efficient response time. We want a high level of efficiency as it was during the time of the December the 28th, 2009 fire, time when we got an announcement here a few months ago that there was a major fire with the cross gates, and you know that staff was there to help people who were in need, and that's what this city and county needs. So I'm going to ask you just individually, would y'all personally and immediately and expeditiously reevaluate your position as to the Starkville office so we can get it back like it was before we had this bureaucratic change in the organizational structure. And so hopefully in the future that we can get input from the local citizens and the local officials and allow us to weigh in on that. I would take it that your office, and of course I know you're the CEO, that's what you get paid for, to come up here and hear these type things. But I take it that you all get paid with taxpayers' dollars. Is that correct?
No, sir. It's primarily private contribution.
Okay, but you still get paid, but you're a representative of the taxpayer. So,
Yes, sir.
so can you give me assurance tonight that you'll be, getting in touch with the mayor, if, at least soon, as the CEO for our city, as to what actions that you're going to be taking, and as to what action that you're representing to us tonight. So, how soon do you think you can get back to the mayor to let us know? So, because I want to have a mental expectation of how soon you're going to be letting us know.
Within 7 days, I would like to talk.
Okay, you're going to give him a report as to the staffing level, the number of people. You're going to give the mayor a report, and you
Okay, please.
yes, you're going to give the mayor a report from 7 days from today's date.
Within 7 days, I would like to engage the mayor as we work to resolve our issues. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Mr. Smith, does that mean that we'll have a chapter in Oktibbeha County?
A chapter is an internal designation to the American Red Cross. We will have what we call a service delivery point here. I want us to, if we could, focus on the office being open and services being provided out of that office, and that will continue, sir.
And I guess one of the matters of concern I have that's been expressed to me by the staff and volunteers of our local organization is that in this reorganization there were chapters established that had not been in existence before, and this chapter, which had seen probably the most funds taken in a single year in its life, and also probably had seen more disaster response locally than any year previously, felt undercut as we were told that we would no longer have a chapter designation in this community. And I guess from my standpoint, it is very, very important to me that the Red Cross do whatever possible to repair the relationship with our local volunteers. Because understand that the universal name and symbol of the organization Red Cross means a lot, and it's something we'll always be supportive of in this community. But so too are the names and faces of those individuals that we've stood outside of fires with and watched them volunteer their time and effort to see to it that members of our community were cared for. And I guess on a personal note, I'm not privy to the detail of all of your discussions, but it's very important for me as I assess this situation that your office repair those relationships and restore the full confidence of our local volunteers.
Thank you, sir. We fully recognize that the Red Cross is only as strong as its volunteers and its local community as a whole, and that is of paramount importance is that we do work hard to repair relationships, not only with volunteers, but with you, Mr. Mayor, and the board at large.
Further questions or comments by the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
And our public hearing for this evening has been removed from the agenda. So that will move us to mayor's business. And the first matter that we have before you is the consideration of approving a Main Street and Lampkin Street closure for a youth parade to be held on July 23rd, 2010. And I'd like for Master Officer Bardley to brief the board just a little bit on the youth summit that this is going to be a part of on July 23rd.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say good evening to the mayor and the board of aldermen. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to come here this evening to present what myself, along with several concerned community leaders and citizens in the city of Starkville, are attempting to do. First, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity when you came to me and advised me that there was another organization attempting to accomplish the same task that we were trying to accomplish, which was save our youth in the community before we lose them. Myself, along with several other community leaders within the community, are right now focusing on Stop the Violence Parade, which is going to be July the 23rd, which is this Friday, here in the city of Starkville, with a bunch of youth who's we're going to get together and we're going to do a small parade downtown, which will show the citizens and community that all youth aren't about violence, that they are about safety and they are concerned about their future. This parade will start at 12 noon downtown Starkville and should end no later than 12:30. On the following week, July the 28th, we're also having a youth summit. Pastor Timothy Bourne, who is the principal at Henderson Intermediate School, he's going to be the keynote speaker, and one of the most sought-after youth motivational speakers, Pastor R.J. Matthews, is going to be the moderator on this date of July the 28th at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Starkville Complex. Our goal and our mission is to save our youth. We all know the crimes that's been occurring in Starkville has been being committed by young people, whether it's rape, whether it's robberies, burglaries, assaults. They're being committed by our young people. And a few of us come together and we've decided that we no longer can sit by and allow our young people to destroy their futures without us becoming involved in it. And I really thank the mayor. I thank some of the aldermen that were involved in our past endeavors, Alderman Vaughn, Alderman Perkins, and also Ms. Outlaw, who also contributes a lot in the community with helping our young people. Right now, I'm just asking that the Board of Aldermen and the mayor, in the near future, with our endeavors, that we ask that you all assist us with all these projects that we're trying to accomplish, whether it's just an appearance or just giving a word of encouragement to our young people when we have these type of events to show them that we are supporting them. I'm not originally from Starkville, and I think that if I'm not from Starkville and I'm putting the extra effort to kids in the community that I'm not from the area that I'm not from, then surely the people that reside here or that was born and raised in Starkville should be concerned about as much as I'm concerned. So I just thank the mayor and the board of aldermen for giving me this opportunity to bring this to the attention not only to you guys, but to other citizens within this community.
And we thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yes.
Are there any questions or comments from the members of the board?
I
Alderman
was just
Carver.
also going to say thank you for your proactiveness and your leadership and helping these youth any way possible. I know that this has been a tough time for a lot of people in this town, but really just thank you for your leadership and everybody involved with this, and thank you for setting this up from the bottom of my heart. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
I would also I hope the board and mayor also want to fully support this. And are you going to be speaking also, Mayor?
I will be at the summit. We had a little bit of a conflict on a welcome because I had a meeting, but I'm going to be there later in the afternoon, and if opportunity presents itself, I might speak. Yeah. But Alderman Sistrunk will be participating on a panel that morning. Further questions or comments by the members of the board? Alderman Corey.
I think it's a wonderful event, and I would be happy to move approval of the request.
I've got one question real quick. Do we need to put any kind of inclusion of in-kind services? Or is it just
No.
simply a street closure?
Yeah, I think this one's just simply a street closure.
Okay.
Alderman Corey.
That said, I would move approval of the closing of Maine, Lampkin, Lafayette, and Washington for Youth Parade to take place on July 23rd at noon.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of a Main Street and Lampkin Street closure for a youth parade to be held on July 23rd, 2010 at noon. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by everybody. Alderman Sistrunk. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Thank you, Master Officer Bartlett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the approval of a resolution to participate in the Mississippi Main Street program. And this is something I'm very excited about, we have been meeting with various stakeholders in the community, leaders at the partnership and the Downtown Business Association, with the idea in mind of determining whether the city of Starkville wants to participate in the Mississippi Main Street program. And I'm pleased to say that I think the conclusion has been yes. And the request that is before us now is to adopt a resolution that will officially indicate the city's support of Starkville's application for to be a member of the Mississippi Main Street program.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Perkins.
Thank you. You just give me a little background history. I noticed, and this is not in opposition to this request, but I noticed in section 3 of the proposed resolution that the city of Starkville and Greater Starkville Development Partnership guarantees that a Main Street project manager with a travel and operating budget will be employed. So elaborate on that. Who will do the hiring? What will be the cost? Where will this person be located? Who will this person report to? And where will the funding come from?
That person is going to be an employee of the partnership, and funding for that position will come from various organizations, but not the city. Now, there is a chance in the future that the city could be asked to contribute to the program, and that would be in the form of extending the charrette that this program provides at the outset from a 3-day program to a 5-day program. They have a budget for the program, and they can fully fund it for the 3-day program. But there's been some talk, and Alderman Dumas has been a part of those discussions as to how it would relate to the comprehensive plan, about how the city could benefit from having this team of experts here for an extra couple of days. And there may be a funding request that comes in the future for that.
And the resolution does not explains it like you just explained it, so that's understood. And I take it to you to make sure it's understood, because when you just look at it without the background information, it just leaves those questions unanswered. But as long as you understand, they understand, so we should be good.
Yeah, this resolution does not commit to any funding. I do want everybody to know that there could be a request for funding not related to the staffing of the position forthcoming in the future, but one step at a time. This is just to say that the city is supportive of the Mississippi Main Street program. Alderman Carter.
What are your thoughts? What's the proposed allocation? What kind of dollars are you talking about?
It would be probably between $10,000 and $15,000. But again, first things first. It's not any kind of obligation that's associated with this. That's a conversation that would have to be had with all of the potential stakeholders in the extended charrette program, and also a consideration that needs to be made as part of the budgetary process, because that would be a fiscal year 2011 item. But again, this resolution in no way conditions funding in the future. That will be a separate decision. Alderman Corey.
I have a correction to note on this resolution as well, typo. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen, not City Council, because that is a different form of government.
don't have line numbers where.
Third sentence, well, fourth
See
sentence.
all caps. No, therefore.
Ah, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Aldermen. And we don't have a motion pending, so just make note of the fact that your as presented, if an as presented is included in the motion, the clerical change would be made to reflect Board of Aldermen instead of City Council.
Mayor, since this does not obligate the city to any funds, I would be willing to move approval of the resolution.
Okay, Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of the resolution to participate in the Mississippi State Main Street Program as presented. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
As presented with that change.
As
With the corrections.
Right, with the correction.
As presented with the changes noted. Is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
Do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. All right, and that exhausts mayor's business, and
No. Well, yes, no.
yeah,
We did.
last item was placed on consent. So that will take us to board business, and the first item under board business is a report from the police chief on increased instances of graffiti and actions taken to minimize and repair. And this was a report requested by Alderman Corey. Alderman Corey, would you like to introduce the matter?
Well, sure. I mean, it was just based on an observation I had made, as I tend to like to try to jog in the evenings. And over the course of several weeks, I've noticed this sort of increasing amount of graffiti on various buildings, public buildings, signs. And I just wanted to kind of ask the police chief to sort of give us a report on that and discuss, what steps are being taken to kind of resolve that problem.
A valid concern. We first started experiencing graffiti in a more frequent level a few months ago. It started very slowly. At first, it almost looked cute because it was stenciled and there were only one or two, and then it became more prolific. Now, it reached the height in April and, for the most part, almost ceased at the beginning of May. The artist, if you will, is apparently using a stencil, and they just put it up and apparently spray it really quickly. We have run an article in the paper to discuss it. We intend to run it on Crime Stoppers. It has been assigned to the investigative division for a full-scale investigation. Now, there are two types of graffiti, if you will, currently that we're experiencing. One is the random acts of just malicious mischief, vandalism that you will see from time to time and historically have. But the level of this new problem with the stencils has been a little something different. Now, our plan of action is to install some cameras. We have cameras that are clandestine type cameras in certain areas that we feel like are being targeted. The second thing is there is a method that was used in major cities about graffiti, and basically it was called the open window principle. Some of y'all might be familiar with it. If you have a building that has a window knocked out of it, if you don't repair that window, then other people will come along and knock more panes out, and then the building becomes obviously in disarray. It appears to be abandoned. But the gist of the matter is you should get on the problem quickly and address it. And the point being of this is I think we need to, once we see these type things occur, try and eliminate them, clean the area, and remove the graffiti as soon as we can. And I'm working with Mr. Devlin about an action plan on that. But I think on the public property, for sure, we can remove it, clean it, paint over it. Some of the acts have occurred on private property, and we intend to get permission from the landowners there, property owners, if we can. But that's our plan of action so far. We have not made an arrest yet. But we certainly will if we can develop enough information as to who's doing this. The degree of criminal activity involved would be a felony, prosecutable under the malicious mischief statute. And that is where we are currently. I'll be glad to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions or comments for the chief?
I was
Alderman
gonna say
Carter?
also, to be included in this discussion, if you notice the water towers, especially behind Central Station Grill there.
Correct. We have talked about that. I think two things there. We of course need to paint over that, and then we need to secure the ladder where that tower is not accessible. And I'm not sure how they got up there yet, but I think we need to do a better job of guarding against that by a little prevention. But yes, sir.
Further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments by the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And the next matter on the agenda is a report from the Budget Committee. Alderman Sistrunk?
The Budget Committee met July 14th. One of the things that we did initially was to take a look at our financial performance this year as measured by our budget for this current year. We looked at our revenues and our expenses to see how we were tracking along with our budget numbers. The good news is that our revenues are about where they should be, considering the numbers that we budgeted. That's particularly good because our sales tax numbers are holding very steady, and in this economy, that's a terrific thing. Our expenses, and I'd like to commend our department heads here, our expenses are coming in less than budgeted to date, and I and all of the board appreciate the efforts that our department heads are making to operate within limited budgets. The budgets, as a matter of fact, for 2010 for expenses are roughly what they were in 2007. So we're operating, we had budget cuts last year, and we're essentially operating at 2007 year levels. As a result of not having any real growth in our budgets, we of course have things that have been delayed and deferred as far as improvements, both operational improvements and capital improvements. The next thing the Budget Committee did was, in preparation for next year's budget, start to look at some of the operational and capital requests that department heads have. These are not budget requests in terms of their normal operations, but rather items that will allow them to be more efficient, to provide better city services, some of those things that have not been addressed over the last 3 years. We are trying to put together a prioritization as a first step toward developing a capital capital plan for the city so that we will know where we're going to spend our monies in the future. The next step, the Budget Committee will get back together one more time and sort of wrap that particular process up. And the next step will be to schedule a work session with the board as a whole so that we can give the city department heads and the city clerk's office some guidance as to what we will budget for next year. Even though this has been a very positive year in terms of revenues, one thing that everybody should be aware of is that there are some one-time monies in those revenues. There's also a shortfall in our general fund, unrestricted ending fund balance. So we have a good bit of ground to make up in reaching the same level of revenues next year.
Any questions or comments for Alderman Sistrunk?
What's the total cost of the one-time funds? How much did we get in one-time fund revenue?
There's probably about $350,000 in one-time monies, actually a little bit more than that. There's probably also a couple of $100,000 shortfall in the ending fund balance. So we probably have over $500,000 that we're going to need to make up.
Are there any additional one-time funds available this next year?
They're not to the level that there were this year. Not to the level. And there are also funds that probably need to be spent in specific areas. not for operations. We should never spend one-time monies for operations. So,
Further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? General comment, we do have a very difficult budget season in store for us again, but we'll make it through. All right.
I guess one other question. I know when our bonding attorney came, he mentioned a percentage of what, 10% ending fund?
I think that they were hopeful that we would have,
Between 6 and 8%.
I was gonna say $500,000 to $750,000, and we're going to be below 3, well below 3 probably.
So we're-
10 is ideal. 5 would be a wonderful start.
So we're less than half, and we'll be able to get to less than half than what our bonding attorney is suggesting.
I don't know if we will be able to get to.
Get even to half.
Right. But our goal should be each year to budget some increase in the ending fund balance, because that's critical to our well-being as a city and our ability to fund things going forward.
An important thing to remember is that ending fund didn't get spent overnight, and it
No.
can't be replaced overnight either.
Right.
Right. Further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the consideration of the formation of a sign review committee. Alderman Sistrunk.
I would like to see if there are people on the board who have an interest in serving on that committee. Obviously, the mayor and the CAO should probably be part of the committee. Are there people?
Mayor, I'd like to be involved with that also.
Mr. Carver, Mr. Perkins, Mr. Parker, I'm sorry.
I think this has such a strong tie with what could potentially come out of the comprehensive plan. I would like to be a part of that.
Mr. Dumas, good.
Well, I can,
I think that's a good committee. I would move that we appoint a committee consisting of Mr. Carver, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Dumas, along with the mayor and the CAO, to review and recommend revisions to our sign ordinance, no later than that first meeting in September.
A motion has been made to create a committee to review the sign ordinance and present findings to the board no later than the first meeting of September. And the committee will consist of Alderman Carver, Alderman Parker, Alderman Dumas, the mayor, and the chief administrative officer. Is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Sistrunk, you wish to speak on the merits?
No, thank you.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we've been going for 90 minutes. Can we take a break?
Recess. Without objection, we'll move into brief recess. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, stand in recess. Meeting will now come back to order. And the next matter on the agenda is the consideration of request by Tabor Properties to approve a conditional use to allow multifamily residential in a C2 general business zoning district located at 703 Spring Street in Ward 4. Prior to Mr. Griffith's introduction of the item, I'm going to let the city attorney tell us how the voting procedure will go tonight.
Because it is a conditional use of request, it's just a simple majority vote.
Okay. Mr. Griffith.
Mr. Mayor and Board, item CU 10-02 is a request by Tabor Properties LLC to approve a conditional use to allow multifamily residential use in a C2 general business zoning district. The subject property is located at 703 Spring Street in Ward 4 and will affect approximately 2.42 acres of land. The applicant is proposing to convert the recently closed University Inn into condominiums where approximately 100 hotel rooms would be renovated into 52 units for fee simple sale. The condo owners will be offered the opportunity to participate in a proposed condo hotel program. A condo hotel is generally defined as a building constructed, maintained, operated, and managed as a hotel in which each unit is individually owned and which some or all of the units are available for rent. and where the structure, common areas, and facilities are owned by all the owners on a proportional individual basis. 22 property owners of record within 300 feet of the subject property were notified directly by mail of the request. The public hearing notice was published in the June 11th edition of the Starkville Daily News, and a placard posted on the site concurrent with the notice. The planning office has received no phone calls regarding this latest advertisement and notification of the request. An initial public hearing was held by the Planning and Zoning Commission on May 11th, where it was decided to table the request until a special call meeting could be held on May 20th. At the May 20th meeting, the P&Z unanimously recommended approval of the request with 7 conditions. At the June 1st meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen, representatives of the Cotton Mill Marketplace raised concerns with notification of adjacent property owners in compliance with the city zoning ordinance. The board remanded the item back to the P&Z, directing staff to properly notify all adjacent property owners and the applicant to resubmit a thorough application. The applicant submitted a revised application and asked if a special call meeting could be held to enable him to meet a proposed closing date. The public hearing was scheduled for Tuesday, June 29th, and advertised and noticed on June 11th. The planning staff revised the staff report to include additional information provided by the applicant, copies of his application and accompanying letter, as well as that of Mr. Jimmy Gurris representing the Cotton Mill Marketplace. Planning staff provided the original 7 conditions recommended by the P&Z for approval of the conditional use request. Additional materials provided to the P&Z by both the applicant and the opposition have been included in your packets. I understand that the applicant and others may wish to address the Mayor and Board of Aldermen, and unless anyone has any questions for me, I will step away to allow others to speak.
Questions or comments for Mr. Griffin? Any questions or comments from the members of the board? Any questions or comments?
I got one, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Ball.
Mr. Griffin, some months ago, I consulted you about that property over there, and I asked you, anybody intend to do anything with it because it was sitting there out? When it's some months ago, actually, before this even showed up, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Before this even come up, I consulted you about that while I was looking at why hadn't someone taken charge of it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Are there any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, before we move into discussion, this is a little different process because typically when a matter's on appeal, we're considering a rezoning matter, and the process calls for a public hearing. No public hearing is called for in this case because it's a conditional use. As this is a complex matter that has involved much discussion over months, I think it is in the board's interest to hear comments from each side. So what we'll do is we'll hear 15 minutes of comment from the applicant and whoever the applicant would designate to speak as well, and then a maximum of 15 minutes of comment from the appellant and anyone the appellant would wish to designate. What I would ask is whoever the spokesperson for each side is when you do come forward to make your comments, just tell us how you would like your time split, if you're going to allocate time to other individuals, and we'll keep the clock running until your 15 minutes is exhausted.
Let me tag one point on that, Mayor. The applicant does have a right to rebuttal, but whatever time the applicant uses in rebuttal must come out of his initial time.
Yeah. So the way that would work is you'll get a maximum of 15 minutes. For instance, if you used 12 minutes in your opening portion of the comments and you wish to reserve 3 minutes for rebuttal, you would have that 3 minutes after the appellant has made their presentation. But whatever split you choose comes out of your total 15 minutes that you can use. Is the applicant ready? All right. And how would you like your time split?
Well, that's a good question. I think our speech is about 5 minutes, and we have, I believe, 5 people that are going to speak 1 minute, so we should have 3 to 5 left.
Okay. Now, would you like us to cut each of those subsequent speakers off at a minute to make sure that you save your time for your rebuttal, or do you want us to let it run?
No, that'll be fine. Cut them off.
Cut them off at a minute. Okay. All right. If you're ready, you can proceed.
Honorable Mayor and Board of Aldermen, I am Larry Tabor of Tabor Properties. This is my son Jeremy Tabor of Tabor Construction Development. We're here tonight to bring you some exciting news about our project. We're here to request conditional use approval under C2 zoning to convert 100 rooms of the old University Inn on Spring Street into 52 upscale one-bedroom condominiums of approximately 650 square feet each. The project, as you can see from our board that we have prepared for you, would give a much-needed facelift to a depressed old hotel building. It would inject $2.5 million into our economy, which I don't have to tell y'all we entered a depressed economy at this time, and would give much needed work to our subcontractors and their employees. And this money would flow right back into the community, but it doesn't stop there. 80% of our sales on condominiums are to alumni who would buy these units for game day condos, for football, and for other sporting and MSU events. Thus, more precious dollars back into the Starkville economy. There'll also be a significant increase in the property tax base on the property from these units. I think our project speaks for themselves. In the past, we've done in Starkville with 7 Best in Mississippi awards since 2003. I will say it's been a pleasure working with the owners of this property, the Joseph Partnership, and Josh Stevens, the attorney from West Point, on the hopeful purchase of this property. At this time, we would like to commend the Planning and Zoning Commission for their unanimous approval that they gave us on this project. Not once, but twice, of our conditional use request to this C2 property. We have not asked for rezoning of this property, only a conditional use that is allowed in C2 zoning district. I think Ms. Dora Herring, the chairperson at the time of P&Z, summed it up best when she said that she saw very little change from a motel to a condo hotel, except probably less traffic, as most of the unit owners would be out-of-town alumni. The concept is the same. You come into town for a night or two for your visit, and to Starkville, for the sporting event, then go home. There are other college towns who have condo hotels, and one of them, of course, is Oxford. Mr. Jerry Emerson, also the P&Z, stated that we met all criteria for conditional use approval, and further pointed out that the objectives presented by Cotton Mill were asking the city to exercise its police power in hopes of progress with their development. I think all P&Z members felt our project would be compatible with our neighbors, with Cotton Mill, when and if they do achieve and receive their funding for their project. Commissioner Walker took it a step further, pointing out that attachment to place evaporates when you start over from scratch, and that all of the projects that we have before us can be accomplished with proper planning. In addressing the neighbors' concern Mr. Wilson brought forward, in the beginning, Cotton Mill proposed student housing for this very same hotel project. He addressed the problem with some maybe low-income rentals at the hotel. You would not have these with these condominiums. They're upscale units. I would consider them one-bedroom luxury condos, and they will have strict rules and regulations dealing with condominium documents and rules and regulations as far as leasing. At all the P&Z meetings and one board meeting, we had no objections from the neighbors. So it is a surprise to us that suddenly we have a petition that was drafted by Mr. Nicholas to oppose us tonight. It seems that the main objectors to our project is the Nicholas properties or cotton mill development. And I think simply because they want this property to be a part of their commercial plan, even though they do not own it, nor do they have an option to purchase it. They have used this acreage in some of their development plans at time without an option or contract to buy it, and in absence of the current owner's permission. And to put some of your mind at ease, we've spoke today with university officials at Mississippi State, and they stated to us plainly that their focus and their priority of the cotton mill.
You got 1 minute.
1 minute left?
One on your 5.
Oh, okay.
Of course, as the applicant, if you want to continue, you certainly can.
Okay, we may take 6. But at the meeting, after visiting with university officials, they stated very plainly, their focus on the cotton mill is the Cooley Building Convention Center, the restaurant that hopefully will become a part of that, the hotel and the banquet facilities, not our project or the existing University Inn project. We sincerely hope, being very pro-development, that for Starkville's sake and for Mississippi State, that the Cooley Convention Center does become a reality. But let us be clear that this project is not part of the Cotton Mill Convention Center Hotel or a restaurant area, nor will it have a negative impact on any cotton mill development. In summary, let us say that we're a local developer, contractor. Most of all of you know us. We've been in Starkville for 22 years. We're very proud of the fact we have developed or co-developed over $40 million worth of real estate in the city of Starkville. On this project, we have a bank commitment in hand. We're ready to put people to work, and we're ready to build a beautiful building. I see our project increasing surrounding property value, certainly not decreasing them. If we cannot obtain our conditional use approval, our only option may be to reopen the doors of the University Inn and operate it as a hotel. Our main opposition, I guess you would say, is Nicholas Properties, and they are out-of-towners. As far as I know, they have built nothing in Starkville. They have no funding yet of any kind in place on their projects. And this is what I find hard to believe. They have not paid their city, county property taxes totaling $177,000 for 2007, 2009, 2008, and 2009. We should be the ones opposing them as our neighbors. So on our project, as my daddy used to say, a bird in hand worth 2 in the bush. And this is a decision that you will have to make. Thank you for your time and your consideration. We appreciate it very much. And speaking on our behalf briefly are Ted Roman, Bank First, West Shelton and Bell Building Supply, Larry Bell Painting, Mark Castleberry, and Attorney John Moore. We hope to save a few minutes for rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, and the time that has elapsed is 8 minutes. Each of the subsequent speakers will have 1 minute, and I've been instructed by the applicant to cut you off if you
1 minute.
get to a minute.
Okay, thank you. My name is Larry Bell. I'm a local contractor. I've been in Starkville for 34 years. I've been painting, and we're in a recession right now. And Mr. Tabor, the last 10 years, he's been buying me and other contractors with a lot of work. And at this time, we really need the work. Before that was Tabor, that was Georgia. I used to paint all their condos and stuff. And what we have is 2 local people that trying to help the locals, contractors in Starkville. They knock them out of town, they right here in Starkville, and we really need the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. And please do introduce yourself when you start so the clerk will be able to make the record.
Mayor and Board, my name is Wes Shelton. I'm with Bell Building Supply. And I was first like to originally tell you about Tabor Construction Development, but I'm going to remind you because you all already know about them. First of all, when you think of Tabor Construction, you think of quality. from planning and development to construction to sales, top to bottom, all the way through, done a great job in providing quality to their projects. Secondly, it's a local boost, as Larry said, to the economy, and buy local, use local subs. Also, they bring in out-of-town guests, as Mr. Tabor said as well. Out-of-town people come here strictly to spend money in our economy. They found a great niche in the market, and they've done well with it. They also have a proven track record. Mr. Tabor said they've been around for a while. They've already done these kinds of projects. They've taken something old and made it new. The Pete Old House, which was the old Gales apartment complex, is one of the best examples. And even closer to our store is the Central Station, which was the old boarding plant. Two examples of taking something older, making it new, making a positive impact on our town. Also, the last point I'd like to bring is that it's a great opportunity for this town.
Your time's expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Castleberry with Castle Properties. I'm a developer, but I've got no financial interest in this project or the Tabors. My company, we have a commercial, we have a residential, we have retail, office, and hotel projects in 7 cities in Mississippi. Here in Starkville, I have ownership in the Hampton and Comfort Inn and Suites that are very close to this property. Also, in addition, the former Coke plant that we're doing development on. We have a project going on in Columbus, Mississippi, approximately a $30 million project, 2 hotels and 4 restaurants. I'm here in support of allowing the rezoning of this project. Some of the concerns I've heard are that if they don't have a large enough retail piece or the ability to build a lifestyle center, that it'll hurt the rest of the project or the forthcoming. I guess I'd say, again, we have a $30 million project going on in Columbus with 2 hotels. We don't have the advantage of the Cooley Building, a fabulous structure. We don't have the advantage of Mississippi State across the way from it. So the answer to that would be there's no reason that not having a significant retail piece of this project should endanger it. Also in the P&Z meeting, just to address, I'm almost rebutting something that hasn't been said in this meeting yet, the idea of a lifestyle center being built in Starkville, and a definition of a strip center being kind of demeaned. Saddle Creek in Germantown is probably the most prestigious retail section in this area. That's basically a strip center. It's a very nice strip center, but it's the square footage of that project could easily be built on the land presently owned by Mr. Nichols. So again, saying that without this additional property, it's going to kill a nice quality retail development is a false statement. Projects like that can be shown to you all over the place. It's how the project is done. It's not by definition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Ted Roman. I'm Vice President of Bank First here in Starkville. We are proud to be the lender of choice for Larry and Tabor Properties. We do have a signed and executed commitment letter. We have already done some preliminary work, and if approved tonight, this project is approved, we could very expeditiously close this transaction to purchase and then convert to a construction loan. So we obviously believe in Larry and his ability to do this project and be a successful one, and something very good for Starkville. And we obviously believe in the project. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Is that it for?
I'd like to say mine for rebuttal.
Okay.
How much time is left?
You'll have 4 minutes remaining for a rebuttal. All right, at this time, we'll hear from the appellant, and if you want to do the same thing where you tell us how you'd like to allocate your time, and we'll keep the clock running. Now, you will not get a shot at a rebuttal, since basically you've heard their case to start with. So just, I guess, tell us how you'd like to allocate the full 15 minutes and go forward.
Jimmy Gross is probably going to speak for 5 minutes, and then David Moore will speak for PK Capital for 5, and Mr. Ben had asked me if he'd like to speak for just a couple minutes, and then I'll finish up.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen, I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here on behalf
of the Cotton Mill Marketplace Development Group LLC. And just for the record, I hold a master's degree in urban and regional planning and am here in my capacity as a planning expert and would offer some comments. Again, for the record, I would like to say that your zoning provisions dealing with conditional uses speak to land use compatibility and criteria for conditional use review and approval. And it, among other things, says that the applicant shall demonstrate that the conditional use and its off-site impacts are compatible and harmonious with adjacent land use and will not adversely impact land use activities in the immediate vicinity. I would like to say first and foremost that I have very carefully reviewed your comprehensive plan and reviewed your comprehensive plan in the sense of how this conditional use is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I believe that all of the mayor and board members have a copy of documents that we provided to the Planning Commission that spoke to compatibility and consistency with the comprehensive plan. And I say without question, and you have copies of the documents, I will not go through them, but they very clearly point to many instances of inconsistency of this conditional use with your comprehensive plan. There is absolutely no question in my mind and in my professional opinion that the proposed conditional use is not compatible with adjoining properties and does have an adverse impact on adjoining properties in many ways. First and foremost, the E.E. Cooley building is a National Historic Treasure. It's on the National Register. This proposed condominium development is clearly not compatible with the unique and historic character of the E.E. Cooley building and will detract from the property. It's clear in my mind that the project will adversely impact one of your most imposing gateways in this community to Mississippi State University. Your comprehensive plan speaks to the importance of attractive gateways that introduce people to your community and to the university. And there's no question that this project and would not be a real asset to the gateway of Mississippi State University. The project is incompatible with the architectural and aesthetic quality of the architecture and of the E.E. Cooley building and other features of the Cotton Mill project. The project, in my opinion, will create a glaring, incompatible property that is inconsistent with a well-designed and well-planned project. There's no question, I heard a comment made earlier about a false statement being made about the desirability of this property for commercial development. I've worked with a lot of retail and commercial developers for a lot of years, and there's no question in my mind that the attractiveness of this property, the desirability of adjoining properties is adversely impacted by this proposed development, and it would detract from the property values, having a negative impact on the property. Another thing that causes me some concern is that it's my understanding that the request from Tabor Properties involves a conditional use or the use of this 100 units of former hotel property. What happens to the rest of the property? What happens to the lobby, the swimming pool, the rest of the property, and how does it impact what's going to happen out there? And I think to segregate this from the remainder of the property is not good planning, not good judgment, and all that should be taken into consideration at the time. In closing, there's no question, in my professional opinion, that this development will not be an asset to the E.E. Cooley development, that it will detract from it, and hence detract from the positive impact that that development would have on this community. And any questions?
Nope. We'll do some questions after the presentation is done. Thank you, Mr. Gurris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the board. My name's David Moore. I'm with PDK Capital Advisors. I am a partner in the Cotton Mill Development Group, and just want to make it clear that the Cotton Mill Development Project is different from what we're talking about right now. The land that is currently owned by Mississippi State University, we're delivering to them a world-class conference center, a hotel, and a restaurant, and that's our focus right now. The financing is going well, but it's a lot more complex than just getting one bank to commit to it, but that's moving forward. I'm here to talk briefly on Martin Nicholas's behalf with his property that he owns adjacent to this, because for better or for worse, I've had a lot of condominium hotel experience, and just wanted to share with you a few things. One, the condominium hotel concept started in South America and Brazil, where they weren't able to get bank funding to develop condominiums, and the developers down there sold the units, and that's how they actually did their construction. When it came into the U.S. and into Florida, the developers jumped all over it because all of a sudden it was a way to sell more condominiums. The main sales pitch being that if you were in a resort area, you only used it a couple weeks a year, that you could put it back into the rental pool, and that would help earn money and decrease your cost of ownership. Let me just list a few problems that happened with the whole cycle from bust to boom. We then found out as developers that you couldn't do that because it was a Securities and Exchange Commission violation, and it was cost prohibitive to register the whole thing as a security, so you couldn't talk about any kind of income it generated. Second, we found out that you had not just one partner, but 100 different partners, and they all had different issues, and so you had everything from cleaning issues to changing different sheets, and everybody wanted their own things in there. At the end of the day, a condominium hotel is governed by a homeowners association, and the homeowners association can do a variety of things, including voting out the management company, which has happened on many occasions. So I just want to share something with you about the condo hotel structure, because at the end of the day, the units might be sold as condos with the intent to operate as a condo hotel, but they could just be, they're not putting, you can't force somebody to put it into a rental program. And in essence, they could end up like apartments where the individual unit owners are doing what they want to with their units. And I think that's been one of the concerns people have had, is the residential impact on some of the properties. But I've had the chance to meet the Tabors and think very highly of them, and hope that we can be good, compatible neighbors, but just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Ben, you want to say one thing?
I'm Ben Wilson again. I would like to say, I was the one went to Mr. Nichols after the planning and zone committee had the meeting, I guess about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went to Mr. Nichols and asked Mr. Nichols, would he draw up me something? After the neighbors had talked to me about this, we had got together and talked about the University Motel, what they had planned to do with it. So we got together, and me and a couple of neighbors, and we sat down and talked about it. And we went on and discussed about getting a petition up against this on the impact of the neighborhood, what impact it have on the neighborhood. And so it wasn't Mr. Nichols' idea, just, clearing the record on that. He didn't approach me, I approached him with this. So that's why I got the petition, the question you asked, Mr. Cobb.
Yes, sir.
So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I'm Mark Nicholas. How are y'all doing?
You got 6 minutes.
6 minutes is perfect. First of all, just let me say, I appreciate y'all taking your time up and hearing all of this, but let's I want to boil it down is that we are talking about the rezoning a commercial piece of property to residential. That's what you're doing. I own the 6 acres in front of this piece of property. Besides being the owner, I'm in commercial development, and that's how I make my living, is developing, and I know values of property, and I know how they're adversely affected. And it's my professional opinion and my opinion that this property, if y'all consider taking a C2 commercial piece of property and downgrading it to a multi-residential piece of property, that it will definitely adversely affect the property values of it surrounding it. It is zone C2 for a reason. It's zone C2 for development, to help increase the tax base of this city. And the vision that we share, that the P&Z is supposed to share, and you know, they said they want us to be watchdogs. Actually, that is exactly what their responsibility is to embrace a vision of what this city wants to be in the future. And downgrading a commercial piece of property that is probably, arguably, one of the best pieces of commercial piece of property in this city, downgrading it to residential is going to completely, and dividing up into 52 ownerships, will completely forever take it off the tax rolls, and it will never produce a dime worth of sales tax revenue for the city. It's the vision of what the board has to face, of what they want for their city in years to come. And so with that, I will say that I hope that y'all will look at the vision that we're trying to do and investing a tremendous amount of time and effort in what we want to try to bring to this city. And this project, and I will tell you this, the Tabors, I have the utmost respect for them and their developments. They're very profitable. Have a great name. The Josies, I consider David Josie a friend of mine, and I have a great respect for his father. This is not personal between me and them at all. And I just want to say that for the record. And it's all about compatibility. It's about the values that will be affected of the property that I own, and a vision that the Board of Aldermen has to make about the city and what they want for their future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. And now the applicant will have 4 minutes to use for rebuttal.
Johnny, would you let Jeremy go first?
Sure.
I'm Jeremy Tabor, President of Tabor Construction and Development. I had a couple of comments real quickly as a rebuttal. Regarding the comprehensive plan, I happen to be on the comprehensive plan committee, or review committee. And right now, we're in the process of reviewing, what the city does want. In relation to that and some of the other projects I've done in other cities, I spent a lot of time in college towns. One thing I've talked to Aldermen about a lot is what do we need to get us to the next level? What do we need to get retail here or commercial developments that we don't have? And, the conclusion is the first thing we got to have is house tops and pocketbooks. Because when you talk to retail developers like Mark Castleberry or other people in other communities, you've got to have the population and you've got to have the pocketbooks to spend the money to support the retail. So we all can have visions of great things, but the reality is no retail box is going to come here if they can't pay their bills. And that's the honest truth. And that's one thing we have to look at. What this development is going to do is provide a condo hotel for Starkville. It's something that Starkville doesn't have, other college towns have. It gives our alumni another avenue, maybe a more affordable route to have a second home where they can purchase it at fair market value, have some rental income. And let's talk about compatibility of design. The Cooley building is, I don't know what the age of it is, probably 100 years old. You can't replicate that. You can accent other things around it to be similar, but if you look at Cotton Crossing and developments across the street and whatever Ergon's going to the corner, I don't think that's a realistic argument. But let's talk about retail, and to me, a lot of things I hear about is walkability. I think a combination of retail, if Mr. Nicholas does commercial, our people will be able to leave the ball game, come to the hotel, and walk across the street, go to a restaurant and retail. I think the combination is what we all need. And I think that's what's actually going to happen eventually, whether we do it or somebody else, if we don't get the vote tonight. There's 33 acres at this site total. You can't tell me that 2 acres of residential is going to be detrimental. This town cannot support 33 acres of retail and commercial. It's probably going to be lucky to support 10. This too is going to be an added mix of residential. I think that would be beneficial. One quick comment on the plans for the old hotel. Our plans for it are to tear it down and use it as a restaurant site, which will add to the commercial at that place. One comment regarding the neighbors' worry about students. Okay. Okay, got a minute left. Okay. There's a plan for 8-story concrete parking garage and 400 student housing units directly across from there, which would be students, not alumni. I'll let Johnny finish.
Mr. Moore, you'll have just a little under 2 minutes.
Thank you. I thought I had 15 seconds. All right, I'm gonna try to talk as fast as I can and hope y'all can hear this. First, I'd like to make Ben's report part of the record, as well as all the documents that were part of your package that came from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And as you are aware, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted twice, 7-0, to approve this project. It's almost laughable that they think this proposed project's not consistent with the comprehensive plan to do condominiums when their project itself included that. So how could ours not be consistent when they're trying to do the same thing? Two things. I've been in the real estate business personally and been a real estate closing attorney for 25 years. I've seen a lot of big deals come and go. The first guy that does it typically doesn't make it. The second guy typically doesn't make it. The third guy makes it when he gets it from the bank. These big projects just have a hard time making it. Take a look at a person's body of work. The Tabors, Annabella Project, Academy Village Condos, Academy Village Garden Homes, Glen Hollow Condos, Central Station, Little London. Their track record is impeccable. And I have units myself. I have nice units. They have elaborate units. Their units are not matched by anybody else in town. I take a deal. When I see a real estate deal, you can try to break it down into the most basic elements. And the way I do it is two things on a real estate deal. You have an idea and a project. An idea is just that. It's an idea. A project, the difference between an idea and a project is money. If Mr. Tabor has a project, he has an idea, he has the money, he has the banker here to prove it. They have an idea. They don't have any money. That's the bottom line. They had an option on this property for 2 years. They couldn't produce, they couldn't get it together, and if they can't even buy a lot, how are they going to build a multi-million-dollar project? It's not going to happen. If we've heard comments, and I've seen readings in the paper that if this were to go through, it would kill their project. It's not going to kill the project because it's already dead. If you can't get the funding to buy this lot, you surely can't get the funding to put a project together of this magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And we'll now move into discussion, and board members certainly be at liberty to ask questions of any of the people that made presentations about the presentations that were made. Prior to moving it into a discussion, the city attorney has asked to speak to the legal standard of what you're considering tonight and kind of lay the parameters for what this decision is.
With a conditional use request, two things come into play, and the first one is that the burden of proof is on the applicant, and that burden of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence. And what that means is 50% plus one, or you could substitute the phrase more likely than not. So the question is, did the applicant more likely than not meet the criteria? The criteria is the second part of the legal test, and the criteria is listed on page 4 of the staff report that Ben put in your packets. It's land use compatibility, sufficient size and adequate site specifications, mitigative techniques, hazardous waste, and compliance with applicable laws and ordinances. In essence, this comes down to land use compatibility, and let me read that section of our ordinance so you guys can have that standard in your mind. The ultimate issue is whether the applicant has demonstrated that the conditional use is compatible and harmonious with the adjacent land use and will not adversely impact land use activities in the immediate vicinity.
Discussion. Discussion by the members of the board.
I'm actually curious to learn more about the aspect of the condo hotel aspect, as far as the renting process and how that process would go about.
Would you like the applicant to speak to it?
Yes.
Mr. Tabor?
What specifically would you like to know?
Well, I mean, this is sort of a first of its kind in this city, if I'm not mistaken. And so I just wanted to know what would be the process by which owners of these condos would then rent it out. Would it be a nightly basis, a monthly basis, a weekly basis? You know, how?
We would structure it in the covenants and restrict it, probably nightly basis. When a person purchases, they have an option to put themselves on a rental pool, and then they select dates where they can use the condo and dates that they would like to put it on the rental pool. And then either our management company would manage it, or we would have a hotel management company manage it.
Further discussion?
So the land use, as in Ben's report, Ben's opinion was that the land use would have very little change in use, with the exception of extended stays. I mean, we're basically using the same concept. The rooms will be rented. They could be rented nightly as the hotel was, correct?
Further discussion?
But there's no guarantee any of it will ever be rented. Is that correct? They could be owner occupied or held for the owners.
That'll be the owner's option to opt into that rental program.
No, these are, like I said, they would be upscale condominiums, but you would have a lot of owners that would choose not to put their program in a rental program. Trying to keep it distributed.
Further discussion? Alderman Carr.
First of all, I just want to start my piece by saying thank you to Mr. Tabor for wanting to be proactive in a time like this, and also to the P&Z commissioners for everything you do. I know we've appointed some experts in the field, and I've actually gotten to sit down with some of you and pick your brain on some issues, and for the second time for y'all to unanimously, want to approve this conditional use. I think that's overwhelming as a board. You ought to look at that, and really, I mean, this is our local body that we confer with. And with all the things, I know we've been talking a lot about budget lately, and if you want to, there's three things that just really come to mind are boosting the local tax base, and I mean, this is an opportunity to do that. And second is job creation. It's obvious through the support of the local subcontractors and developers that this would be job creation here in Starkville, local job creation. And third is, we talk a lot about historic preservation, but just in that sense, we'd like to improve dilapidated structures. And again, this is an opportunity that Mr. Tabor wants to be proactive in a time that I definitely commend him for stepping out there and taking the lead with this. This development would definitely have immediate results from a reputable developer, and obviously has local support. And with that, and the majority of my constituents have been in favor of it, so it's a pretty easy vote for me. Pretty obvious too with the pictures and the presentation that the Tabors have put up. Just look at that and realize the development. I don't know all the names, but down south Montgomery, Mr. Tabor has done the same kind of work before. This isn't the first time go for him. This is something he's done before. I trust him. We ought to trust him as a board, and we ought to trust our P&Z commissioners and uphold their previous two recommendations. So with that, I think it's pretty obvious of where I stand on this matter.
Further discussion?
I have a comment and a question for Ben Griffith. I can't argue with anything that Mr. Carver said. That's all true. I would, taking a longer view, talking about adding to the tax base for the community, residential property never contributes as much in taxes to the community as a commercial property does. That's over time, commercial property is going to contribute more to the taxes. I don't know, and I don't think the Tabors can guarantee that these properties won't be essentially condos for for the people who own. So Ben, had this been a request to make this a condominium, how would that have changed what we were looking at if it were a condominium development as opposed to a condo hotel?
I don't think it would have changed a whole lot. I still look at it more as a condominium development.
Me too.
With a hotel as an option. Out of 15 units, I don't know.
But it would take us from a conditional use to a residential zoning, or would it?
It could, but the multifamily residential use is allowed as a conditional use in the C2 zone.
Okay.
And we have several of them around town. Y'all probably reviewed, this board probably reviewed 3 or 4 in the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
I got a question too.
Alderman
Mr. Nicholas, is there anything that you can say that can put out into the open what your thoughts are? And I understand the land use compatibility aspect of what these things are, but if how valuable is this piece of property to the plans in which, I know we've seen years, multiple iterations of what these plans could be. What are your thoughts of what this property brings to the value of the development in which you still are, and I think everybody in this room is hoping comes to fruition, but how does this property really fit into the grand scheme of things that you see happening?
This property is, if you want, if this city wants a large, nice retail development, this piece of property, we have to have a minimum of 10 plus acres to do. And that comes directly from the national retailer that we're working with to try to make that a reality for the city. They've already been here, already looked, and they've already told us where they want to be. And if we don't, and so, can I promise you we can deliver that? No. Do we have a vision of what we hope for the city? Yes. If you downgrade a commercial piece of property to a multi-residential, will it affect the values? Absolutely. You will decrease the values of the property around it, of what you can do, and the grand vision of what this city, I think, absolutely desperately needs. So it will, to answer your question, absolutely will affect it, and it diminishes our ability, and anybody's ability, not just us. Even if Jeremy then wanted to do a retail development, you can't do it on 4 acres. You can't do it on 5 or 6 acres as far as in the grand scheme of getting national retailers. But really what you're doing is downgrading a valuable piece of property to multi-family residential. And that's really what you're doing.
Chris, can you go through and explain the 50% burden of proof?
I've heard it explained like this, and I like it. And beyond reasonable doubt in a criminal trial, that would be getting into the end zone, or at least getting past the 20-yard line, getting in the red zone, about to score a touchdown. You're very close to scoring a touchdown. 50% plus 1 means you cross midfield. You're in the opposing team's territory.
Pun intended on that?
Further discussion?
I guess my biggest concern with the, if we were looking at this project simply as, I understand that we should look at the whole scope of the land and the land use compatibility, but if we were looking at this project, or be it located anywhere else in the city of Starkville, we would all be extremely excited that it was coming and that it was going to be very beneficial to our community. I guess I have an issue with, I understand that you're an adjacent landowner, but asking us to deny a project of which you had I mean, it's not your land, and have no interest in the land at this time. So I struggle with that a lot, in that you want us to deny a project so you can use it later. And
I'm not asking you to deny that project so I can use it later. Whether the Josies decide to sell that property to anybody is not.
Sure.
What I'm asking you to do is look at how it adversely affects my property that I own in front of. It does, it will adversely affect the value of that property and the property rights. And that is absolutely stop there.
Well, I mean, that's just a major concern that I have.
I do feel, though, that another concern to take into consideration is that we not only have some neighboring property owners through Mark Nicholas, but we have 31 signed residents that live within 300 feet of this property. Is that correct, Mr. Wilson?
Well, it's some of them is within 300 feet of, I think it's about 10 within 300 feet, the rest is the neighbor.
But the concern I have about that is that if you look in your packet, some of those, I mean, that document's not dated. We have, and these documents aren't dated either, but we also have letters of support from some of those same people that signed that letter, signed letters of support at another time. So how do we know when they signed that, when they signed that letter of support? Was it before? I mean, some of those same people on that list are also supporting. So how do we marry those two together?
Further discussion?
I guess to kind of state my claim in this whole thing, I've got to say this is probably one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make since getting on the board. And I'll mimic everybody's remarks about what both Larry and Jeremy mean to this city, and I can't say enough about what they mean. And I can tell you, I'm glad Jeremy said something about being on the Comprehensive Planning Committee, because I value his input and his ability and willingness to serve on that committee more than I do anybody else's, because he brings something to the table that is unlike others that have these ideas of what we want to be. He brings the reality of what it is. When I go back and I have studied the comprehensive plan in my sleep, and it's a document I have a lot of heartburn with, but it's a document that I do reference quite a bit, and there's significant issues in there. And one of the things that I agree wholeheartedly with is the idea of the nodal development and what that means to this community. And as someone who's been in the planning field, I understand the importance and the significance of this piece of property to the idea that it's a piece of property from a nodal development standpoint. And we go through this. P&Z heard this issue Tuesday night, or last Tuesday, whenever it was, and I have a feeling we'll hear the same thing next Tuesday night about the idea of strip development zoning versus nodal development. I dare say that this is one of the Tabor project, but the Cotton Mills aspect is probably something that offers the fundamental element of what nodal development is from the master planning standpoint, unlike something we've seen before. And I think when people talk about strip commercial development, and they talk about not the idea of it being a strip center or a strip mall, and I think that can't be confused with the fact that the strip development, from my standpoint, is the parcel by parcel development of individual parcels along whatever you want to call it. And I guess getting back to the vision of what I see this property as being, I can't get away from the fact that it's so important, and it offers something that we have not seen before from the standpoint of having a contiguous commercial development opportunity. And I know from the university side as well as the city side, the importance of this property, the importance of what it can be, cotton mills or not, of having the opportunity to really take the next step of embracing where we're going as a community, embracing the vision of the only bolded section in the comprehensive plan the destination of choice for students, businesses, permanent residents, and visitors. I think this is the piece of property that has the ability to really be the game changer to help us be that destination. And I think there's several other things within this comprehensive plan that really, frankly, can go either way. But it's tough. I'm done.
Further discussion. Alderman Carver.
As far as the RV park, I was the lone vote against it, and that was just due to the fact that it's kind of against the idea of an RV park in the middle of town in layman terms. However, being the lone vote, that said that all of y'all were in favor of a weekend getaway, alumni type situation in a mobile home or a recreational vehicle type setting. And you're doing, if we uphold P&Z's recommendation, we're doing the exact same thing, not less than 500 yards apart. And again, I just say, several of the people on this table have said that their instinct said to vote for it. I say follow your instinct, help the local developers, and I don't think this will hinder the cotton mill marketplace in any way or shape. And I'd heard that Mississippi State University didn't support that, and I contacted Dr. David Shaw. If he's in here, I'd like for him to stand up. And he said that MSU does not support this either way. Most of their concentration is on the Cooley building restoration. So again, this is a win-win situation. Not 2 months ago, I didn't, but everybody else supported a project that was basically the same idea of a alumni type setting, but it was with recreational vehicles. This is an even better chance. You've got a brick and mortar structure. You've got a chance to support your local tax base, increase it, if it is just for a short time. Help your local developers, help your builders. Again, I think it's a no-brainer.
Alderman Parker.
Well, Mayor, I don't, there's no doubt people in spending tax dollars. Mayor, if we've been discussing and we've got lulls, and I'd be glad to make a motion if there's no more discussion.
You want to state your motion?
A motion would be to approve the conditional use request by Tabor Properties LLC to allow multifamily residential use in a C2 zoning district located at 703 Spring Street with 7 conditions as unanimously recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Alderman Parker has made a motion to approve the conditional use requested by Tabor Properties LLC to allow multifamily residential use in a C2 general business zoning district located at 703 Spring Street with 7 conditions as unanimously recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Alderman Parker, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits of the motion? Any discussion on Alderman Parker's motion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Perkins.
Yeah, I'm going to be very brief on this. We have to make these decisions. And, we have to look at all viewpoints, all sides, and consider the totality of the facts and the circumstances, and try to make the best decision that we individually think is best for all. With respect to this matter, of course, I've considered all of the individual comments, statements, arguments, presentations, and other information that has been presented tonight. I supported the matter going back to Planning and Zoning Commission at prior meeting because it was my opinion that the city's ordinance had not been complied with as to the notice requirement. now that it's going back to planning and zoning, we hear from the neighbors in affected areas. That is important to them. It's also important to what the proponents of this request have to say, but I have consistently over the years, as recent as a recent meeting with the matter on South Washington Street, I supported the neighbor's request. I supported the neighborhood. I supported allowing that matter to stay as it was without the PUD going in there. I spoke about neighborhood values. I spoke about family values. I must be consistent. In order to exemplify consistency, it takes leadership. Leadership tells me that I cannot support this request for that reason, so I will vote against the motion.
Further discussion, Alderman Parker.
Well, the interesting thing is that in the overall plan of the Cotton Mills, it includes the residential area. So we would ultimately be responsible for rezoning that from residential to commercial if that phase plan were to take effect. So I know we're hearing from the neighbors, and again, I'll point out the discrepancies in you know, these are dated support letters, and when we have another letter, I mean, I'll point those discrepancies out, but the overall plan showed this residential neighborhood that opposed as commercial. So eventually that would have to transpire for this overall plan to work. So those neighbors, I'll just leave my comment at that.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote on Alderman Parker's motion. And as a reminder, Alderman Parker's motion is for the approval of the conditional use. Please answer yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Nay.
Alderman Parker.
Yay.
Alderman Corey.
Nay.
Alderman Dumas.
Nay.
Alderman Perkins.
Nay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
4 against.
By a vote of 3 in favor with 4 against, this measure fails. Back into discussion on the general matter. Discussion.
I'll speak up.
Alderman Dennis.
I guess going back to Alderman Carver's, I guess just to clarify, I voted in approval for the RV park. And I did so because of it being a, that is a parcel of land that I see in a completely different light than I do contiguous land use on the corner of Highway 12 East that gets significant traffic, Spring Street that gets significant traffic. And I know one of the questions that's continued are you know, I know of comments that is continuous, or comments I continue to hear is the fact that, and we even heard this in the stormwater thing about the fact that, you know, there are so few large parcels of contiguous land uses in the city of Starkville remaining. And from a land use compatibility standpoint, that comes to bear from my perspective in how I have to understand the fact of even going back to the comprehensive plan, of being able to accomplish the things that are pointed out in this comprehensive plan in a manner that is not a sprawl pattern, in a manner that utilizes existing and contiguous land uses within areas of town that have tremendous impacts for not only the quality of life, but infill opportunities, et cetera. And I see there being a land use compatibility issue there of being able to accomplish those things in a manner that is potentially long-term and best for this, for the city.
But the interesting part is that we can tell one developer, he can put residential in his overall development, but we can't tell, but we're telling another developer that he can't do it just right there.
Well, and I think
And-
from my perspective, you take cotton mills out of the equation. I mean, frankly, you know, this is the third year we've talked about cotton mills. It's been there, but you just take that out of the equation.
Absolutely.
We don't know what's going to happen.
I agree.
And you take the assumptions of what's been proposed in the past, you know, multiple times out of it, and and look at it just from the land use perspective of the potential and the compatibility of this land use and what it does in us reaching the goals that are set forth in the comprehensive plan. That's the issue I have.
Sure.
Because I think, I can't make a decision making assumptions on, cotton mills will have student development or parking garages. I can't do that.
Sure.
It's just a simple land use question to me of what the compatibility is, not only with the surrounding context, but long-term and broader within the whole community of reaching the goals set forth in an adopted document that, with all due respect, has some issues, but the things that are on the table tonight, it speaks directly to that will be communicated in the next revisions of it.
But the surrounding areas now are R2 and commercial. So you've almost got by approving a conditional use that is residential, you've almost got a buffer. Because I agree, if you take it all out of context, it would be something agreeable to have something such as this in between R2 and C2. Because we don't know what's you're right, we don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, you've got a whole neighborhood here that would have to be, each individual property owner would have to be bought out for anything to go up there. So that in itself, I mean, honestly, is a monumental task. So, it does seem like it's a good zoning conditional use just because of where it's located. It's at the back of the commercial property. That's my opinion.
Further discussion? Action does have to be taken on this, one way or another tonight. And we don't have a motion that's passed, so,
Mayor, Board, I would move then that we deny the request.
motion has been made by Alderman Corey to deny the conditional use request by Tabor Properties LLC to allow multifamily residential use in C2 General Business Zoning District located at 703 Spring Street with 7 conditions as unanimously recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
Not?
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on Alderman Corey's motion. And just a reminder, Alderman Corey's motion is for the denial of the conditional use. We'll take this vote by roll call. Please answer yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Vaughn,
Nay.
Alderman Perkins,
Yay.
Alderman Dumas,
Yay.
Alderman Corey,
Yay.
Alderman Parker,
Nay.
Alderman Sistrum,
Yay.
By a vote of 4 in favor with 2 against and 1 member not voting, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for authorization to purchase paint for the purpose of painting signposts that hold the historic district neighborhood signs with a not to exceed amount of $500. Alderman Corey?
Yeah, I'm just gonna give the room a second.
We'll give the room a second to clear, and then Alderman Corey will introduce the matter. Alderman Corey?
This had actually come up as a result of previous action the board had taken. As y'all may recall, we had approved some new specially designed signs for our 3 historic neighborhoods in the city of Starkville. And although the signs look really nice, one of the things that I noticed upon them being placed was that our poles were really bad, especially in comparison to these really nice new signs that we had. So one of the ideas I had was to try to get maybe some volunteers together to try to paint and make those poles look a little better. And so I talked to Edward Kemp about it some in his office. I think the idea being to do it just to say a solid black color, similar to what the university is already doing, and a couple of other signposts we have in the city currently exhibit. And so that was just my request, was a not to exceed amount of $500 for us to purchase paint for this. I don't think we'll use the entire amount. That was just a upper limit that I came up with. And unless anybody has any questions, I would move that approval for authorization to purchase black paint for the purpose of painting the signposts that hold the historic district neighborhood signs with a not to exceed amount of $500.
Alderman Corey's made a motion to authorize the purchase of black paint for the purpose of painting the signposts that will hold historic district neighborhood signs with a not to exceed amount of $500. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merit?
I do not.
Any discussion? Alderman Dillon.
What, do we need to say what we're gonna pay for it? Do we need to
Will it come from the street
make a
budget?
statement of where we're paying for it?
Since we,
Well,
or from Edward's budget somehow?
yeah, I didn't speak specifically to that, so I guess that would be a good point to discuss, whether it would come from street department specifically or general fund. Edward, do you want to speak to that?
We have a line item for, in the street department's budget. I think we're probably, I don't know where it's at, so it is. So, I think the total budget for the whole year is $1,000.
He's got plenty of
Where are
that.
we on that budget as far as?
I don't know.
Do you know whether we have $500 left?
There should be, you're right.
Should I introduce that amendment?
Yeah, I would put it there, and if something happens and the money's not there, we can come back and revisit it at the next meeting.
Should I just retract my motion and reword it?
Whichever you think's most expedient.
Okay. All right, in that case, I would like to retract my motion and instead motion that we approve authorization to purchase black paint for the purpose of painting the signposts that hold the historic district neighborhood signs with an amount not to exceed $500 to come from the street department paint line item.
Alderman Corey has rescinded and restated his motion to be the authorization to purchase paint for the purpose of painting the signposts that hold the historic district neighborhood signs with a not to exceed amount of $500, with that amount coming from the paint line of the street department. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merit?
Should not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
We need to go back and clarify item 10H. I'd like to rescind and restate that issue.
Item 10H was previously placed on consent, so
Consent
we're
agenda.
dealing with an adopted motion.
Right.
And you would like to rescind and restate it?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need to modify the agenda?
No.
Okay.
We probably should, but no.
All right, just for,
He's just clarifying this with his.
yeah, I just want to clarify. In your agenda, the matter 10H reads, consideration of the authorization for the building department to issue a 15-day notice for the expiration of temporary certificates of occupancy. The actual motion that was on the table, or the suggested motion, I don't want to confuse this with the fact that we're offering these, that we're doing away with this immediately. And I guess, Ben, this is something we need to clarify from your standpoint. This is a greater than 15-day authorization because it runs out August 4th, correct?
That's 15 days from starting tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow, okay, all right. So, okay, I just want to make sure that we were clear in not only that 15-day notice, because I didn't want that to conflict with number 4 of, on the back of the conditions. Okay, all right, well, I guess I need to make a motion then to approve.
Just make the motion to rescind and restate the original motion.
Well, I move we rescind and restate the initial motion. I just want to clarify it as it reads in the board packet, so that's in the minutes as written. So I rescind and restate, so that the motion reads, move to approve extension of the 3 temporary certificates of occupancy for the buildings located at 972, 974, and 976 Mississippi Highway 12 East until August 4th, 2010, with conditions proposed by staff.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to rescind and restate item 10H on page 4, which was previously approved on the consent agenda. And the new motion would read, a motion to approve the extension, or the new motion would be to approve the extension of 3 temporary certificates of occupancy for buildings located at 972, 974, and 976 Mississippi Highway 12 East until August 4th, 2010, with conditions proposed by staff. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
And to clarify, what this would do is it would rescind the previously passed motion and replace it with Alderman Dumas's motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the matter?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of a request by Mike Brent to approve Fire Station Business Park, a final subdivision plat in a C1, C2 neighborhood commercial, general business zoning district located at the northwest of the intersection of Jackson Street, Mississippi Highway 389, and Garrett Road in Ward 6. Mr. Griffin?
Mayor and Board, the next item is item FP 10-02, which is a request by Mr. Mike Brent for approval of Fire Station Business Park, a final plat located in both C1 neighborhood commercial and C2 general business zoning districts. The subject property is located northwest of the intersection of Jackson Street, Mississippi Highway 389, and Garrett Road in Ward 6, behind Fire Station Number 3. The applicant is proposing a final commercial subdivision plat of 3 lots for an approximate 3.31 acre site. 2 of the lots are currently developed, with the third or middle lot undeveloped at this time. The City of Starkville currently provides potable water and will soon be extending sanitary sewer service to the site. Ford County provides the electrical service, and Fire Station Road is already a public street. City staff members recommended approval of the final subdivision plat as proposed with conditions. The Planning and Zoning Commission struck 2 of those conditions and added a new number 9. Condition number 9 recommends a waiver to the city's sidewalk ordinance due to physical constraints and is subject to research and advice of the city attorney.
All right, I guess first thing we need to do is the city attorney needs to brief everybody on what his research on whether a variance is applicable to the sidewalk ordinance has come up with.
And I have researched that. I have one question for Ben, though, before we get there. Ben, in looking at the plat, I want to make sure I'm reading it right. Is there 25 feet from the center line of the right-of-way on Fire Station Road to the subdivision? Because the regulation I'm looking at is Appendix B, which is our subdivision regulations, Article 6, which constitutes minimum design standards. And it says that when a subdivision is located on only one side of an existing street, and here that would be Fire Station Road, 1/2 of the required right-of-way, and in no case less than 25 feet, measured from the center line of the existing right-of-way, shall be provided by the subdivision. And so my question is whether 25 feet exists from the center line of the right-of-way to what would be the subdivision.
Mr. Brent's the surveyor, and he's pointing out on the plat at the, I guess at the southern corner, there's a 28-foot dimension, and that's from the center line to the property line.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that. All right, I have looked at the sidewalk issue, and the question was whether this board can grant a variance with respect to the requirement of having a sidewalk for all subdivided properties. And the place to start is that there's a general variance power that the Planning and Zoning Commission has that this board can adopt. However, the board doesn't have authority to waive any of the improvements which should be followed in the subdivision regulations, and all of these are in our ordinances. So you can grant a variance, but you can't grant a variance with respect to an improvement. So then you look at what is a required improvement, and they're defined under our ordinance. It says sidewalks shall be constructed if deemed essential for public safety by the Board of Aldermen and the city engineer. So then you go to what the Board of Aldermen have done on the issue, and you've spoken clearly with your new sidewalk ordinance that went into effect last fall, that sidewalks shall be required within the right-of-way along the frontage of existing public or non-city-owned streets located within the city. And the city engineer has taken a position ever since that ordinance went into effect that sidewalks should go to all newly subdivided developments. Therefore, my opinion is that while variances are allowed, they're not allowed for sidewalks because sidewalks are defined as required improvements under our ordinance, and the board, pursuant to the ordinance, has no authority to grant a variance with respect to a required improvement.
Discussion.
So catch me up to speed. This is the property just north of Fire Station 3, correct?
Yes.
If we were to follow our sidewalk ordinance to the letter and grant no variance, then you're gonna basically place a sidewalk inside a locked fence. Is this the fence, the end building just north of Station 3 on that little access road?
Yeah, and now this gets to the engineering side of it, and I guess I've had conversations with the city engineer about this because I guess as chance would have it, we were at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting last week because we were presenting the comprehensive plan, or Alderman Dumas was. And the question I had was on the issue of impossibility and whether it's possible to put a sidewalk on that piece of property. And I'll summarize what Edward told me in that conversation. Then, Edward, you supplement if I get anything that's not right. Basically, that fence is out in the right-of-way currently. So if that fence were not in the right-of-way, it would be possible to put sidewalk there in the right-of-way. So that leaves you with the option potentially if the fence is moved back out of the city right-of-way, then it is possible to put a sidewalk there. Alternatively, it is possible if the ditch that's adjacent to the street is curbed and guttered to put a sidewalk there as well. So there are options for putting a sidewalk there. Mr. Kemp, did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so, and when this project was going through development review, I met with the owners out there and told them about the sidewalk ordinance and that it would have to be that requirement to go forward to the board. And we basically came up with three options. One was to do the curb and gutter, and do the storm drainage in lieu of the open ditch and then put your sidewalk there. The other option was to remove the section of fence that's in the right of way so you could put it on the back side of the ditch, on their side of the ditch, if you will. And then the third option was to leave the fence as it was, because it was, it was existing there, and put the sidewalk on the inside of the fence. But then that posed some access issues,
Yeah.
in that you would have to keep it open, all the time. So, in order to meet the requirements. So those are basically the options that we discussed at that meeting.
Mr. Mayor, may be recognized.
You may.
Mr. Mayor, this is very simple. Follow the law. The law says we have sidewalks and we need sidewalks. If the fence is in our right of way, move the fence. We do not need to make an exception to the laws of the city of Starkville. We made the laws to be followed. We have had people before this board
in other parts of the city asking for us to make an exception to the sidewalk ordinance, and we said no. It's no different tonight. We need to say no. We made the sidewalk ordinance be followed, and we need to let the people of this city know that we believe in upholding the laws of the city of Starkville. And I'm tired of requests coming to this board asking us to give exceptions to the laws that we make. Follow the law. I'm not in favor of giving an exception to the sidewalk ordinance. Now let's go ahead and require this petitioner to do it. We need to make sure that all persons who are similarly situated are treated similarly. There's nothing different about this application. I recall some months ago, we had one requestor who's in a neighborhood on the other part of town talked about he wanted an exception to the sidewalk ordinance. We held that requestor to the letter of the law. What should we do in this instance? Hold this requestor to the letter of the law. Treat people similarly. If you start making exceptions, those exceptions will keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. You'll continue to get these requests. If we take a strong stance and say, look, we're going to follow the ordinance, and the decisions are easy to make. This is the law. This is what needs to happen, Mr. Mayor and Board. We need to require that. We need to put this requirement number 7 and 8 back into this finding. We need to delete requirement number 9. And Mr. Griffin, as to number 3, all public utilities are currently in place will be provided by the city. I think the latter part of it is inaccurate. Will be provided by the city, now because the electrical service is provided by Fort County, so that's not correct. That needs to be rewarded, because we don't need to legally bind ourselves to something that we cannot perform. Where it says number 3, all public utilities are currently in place or be provided by the city. All utility will not be provided by the city because the utilities are done by Fort County. And if we adopt this statement, we're saying that we're going to be providing sewer service. I don't know whether we're at the point, Mr. Mayor, and to my distinguished colleagues, as whether we want to say that all utility would be provided by the city. I don't know whether we are ready to provide sewer. We had someone come before the board some time ago about sewer service in that area, and the board had reluctance and did not take any action about any sewer matter. So I don't know whether we need to adopt that, but that's something I'd like for the mayor and the board to consider. But definitely, we need to reinstate number 7 and 8 and delete number 9. And Mr. Mayor, I would recommend to the board as we take action on this, that we just adopt it accordingly. But it is a danger zone to making exceptions to our ordinance. And I think the ordinance needs to be followed, and there's no basis for a variance to our sidewalk ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion.
Regardless of how we vote tonight, you're always going to get people come in front of the board and the mayor and try to have exceptions to any law. And I personally feel like the sidewalk law at times is overly bureaucratic, and the common sense thing to do would not to be put a sidewalk out on an area that's basically another sidewalk to nowhere. It's going to be, I'm all for sidewalks in neighborhoods, but take time tomorrow and ride out there and see. I mean, if we. I don't agree with Alderman Perkins. I don't think you need to follow the letter of the law. I don't agree with every law that's in the books in the United States of America, and this is one I don't believe we need to follow to the letter of the law. I say grant a variance, do the common sense thing to this, and we need to look at the sidewalk. All of the people come for us on by case basis, and I don't think whichever way you vote tonight, you're always going to have individuals coming and arguing against sidewalks or far sidewalks. So.
Further discussion. Any further discussion?
What do we have in the way of, with the fence being in the right of way? Is there a trigger point in which, as part of city right of way, is that do we grant an easement for that? How does that? What's the scenario there from a private property infrastructure imposing city right of way?
Chris, you want to speak to that?
I'll have to look at that issue a little bit more, Jeremiah. it's one of those things where certainly if we needed access to that property, we could get it because it's in our right-of-way. Whether we can immediately go in as a trigger and tear down the fence because it's in our right-of-way, we got to be careful about that, and I want to look at that further.
Right.
Mr. Griffith, how would you recommend that we do the wording on number 3 in light of my comments, if any different in the wording?
I would probably strike all public utilities and replace that with potable water and sanitary sewer service, because those are the two utilities that are being provided by the city or will be provided by the city.
So we are in the place to provide sewer at that location?
Mr. Devlin indicated that it's been approved. It's not begun yet, but it has been approved, and it's in his I don't know what the schedule is, but it's in the works.
Doug, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, the board approved this project 2 or 3 meetings ago.
How does that square with other areas that aren't currently served in that area?
Not sure I understand your question.
Well, this is in a previously annexed territory where there's area around it that's not currently served by sewer. And how does the provision of sewer to this one area, I guess, square with the position that we've taken previously, which is we're going to make a determination on all of that territory and provide it or statewide it's not economically feasible at that time?
It's always been our policy when a subdivision, goes in, that we bring the services to the edge of the parcel. That's just always the way the city will call it.
Okay.
I mean, if we're gonna be consistent, I guess we need to be consistent in this case as well. So, anytime somebody does a subdivision and we don't have service, available to at least one border of the parcel, we've always bought it to that point.
So is this facility currently on a septic system?
Yeah, there's 2, all the structures out there, even on the 389 frontage, are all on septic systems for the project.
Discussion by the members of the board.
And there is money in the budget.
Mr. Mayor, again, let me just say this, and I'm not trying to monopolize the floor, but, this is very risky, about the sewer service. There was an applicant who came here, I don't remember the name, just in that same area, was trying to get the sewer service, and there was some feedback about how problematic that was, and you raised a good point. There are some other places in annex areas who, that does not have this sewer service, and basically it's being piecemeal as to trying to get it to this location, because if you put this in this motion, then we are obligating ourselves to providing sewer service. I don't recall any major plan that speaks to all the areas in the annex area without the sewer service. I would like to know about all the areas that in the annex area that need sewer service. It's kind of it will really bind us if we go ahead and put it into this motion, if the board sees fit to put it in the motion for sanitary sewer service.
But Mayor, I think we've heard from our Public Works Director that it's in his budget, and that's been our common acceptable procedure, that if it's a development, or if it's a platted development, then we will bring service to it. And then I understand your concern, but we've heard from the Public Works Director that he's got it in his budget and he can do it. And I would agree, it was Florida Care Properties or who came before us, and if it would be great if we brought it to the edge of this, if they could hook on somehow, because it gets really close to them. But
Mayor, I have a question. Mr. Devlin, the custom and practice of running sewer up to the edge of a development, is that just a custom and practice, or can you point to a part of the subdivision regs that compel that?
I don't know. I hadn't read them that closely.
Okay.
says that once we get it there, then it's the developer's responsibility to install it within the subdivision, then dedicate it to the city.
Okay.
But, I don't see how we can, allow people to develop subdivisions and not be able to bring the services to them. Just doesn't make sense.
Mr. Mayor, this is a policy issue. I don't think we need to hear from the department head on question of that. We don't need them getting into any policy discussion. If we have questions for department heads, they can answer. We do not need department heads getting into policy issues.
Further discussion? Alderman Carter.
On a larger scale, it's up in my opinion, but I think we need to go back and look at the sidewalk ordinance and be able to grant variances on a case-by-case basis.
I would agree. I think at some point there has to be some common sense involved in some of the decisions that we make. I realize that we're bound by ordinances and we're bound by certain things, but, there's some instances where it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any economic sense for anybody. Because if these sidewalks are put in, there's some point when we got to use judgment, and I would much rather us be able to use judgment than be. I'm a big supporter of sidewalks for sure.
Mr. Mayor, one question. One question to the city attorney. Mr. Attorney, are you going to be able to defend us successfully when we start making exceptions, denying some, and granting some for sidewalks? I mean, you're going to be able to win these cases?
It makes it more difficult. You mentioned two prior occurrences. One was the Starkville Station RV Park where they asked for a sidewalk exception and we held them to the language of the ordinance. Another was the Clayton Richardson development in the fall of 2009, and we held them to the sidewalk ordinance. Inconsistent enforcement would raise the potential for litigation. And anytime litigation occurs, the outcome is uncertain.
Further discussion?
Mayor, let me tag that. The remedy would be to amend the ordinance.
And that's
Not-
right.
Alderman Court.
And, Mr. Senator, do you have any recommendations for the wording of number 3 in the conclusions as far as, given what has been said? How
Well,
it should be worded?
one thought I had is whether number 3 is really mandated at all for this particular request. Could it be stricken and not spoken to and still go through?
Well, one of the reasons that we have that condition and that's one of our standard conditions, is that when property is subdivided, that one of the conditions is that there's access to a public street, and the other is that the utilities, being water and sewer, are provided or available.
And can we say that water and sewer are available right now to the edge of this development?
Not sewer.
Just water?
That's the way I worded it, that way that it will be provided. As Mr. Devlin's indicated, that it's in the budget, it's been approved by the board, and in the process of being completed.
Is the area in its current state serviceable by the septic system that it's on? Is there any health hazard associated with subdividing, adding to the property, and having it serviced on the septic system that it's on?
They would have to make application to the Department of Health.
Well, what-
You would determine.
Well, what you're doing is you're adding cost. I mean, if our standard policy has been to do that, now you're adding cost to their development because, there are 2 buildings, and I'm sure those buildings couldn't exist without a septic tank. But they've got another lot in the middle. If they were to sell that lot, I mean, now you're putting a burden on that lot owner that he's got to provide his own sewer in the city limits, and that hadn't been a policy that we've had.
The point that Alderman Perkins makes is a very valid point, though. And that is, they are almost in the exact same situation as Florida Care is. And I do think we're pretty close to a long-term resolution of this. Let me just say to each of you that it bothers me greatly that we have not yet met our obligations of the 1998 annexation. That process of making those final determinations and extending services where it's economically feasible is underway. But our position since this new board and me were elected has been that we're going to make that decision all at once rather than picking out different places where sewer is most needed. So essentially the dilemma is we have already told somebody that is fairly close in location to you that the determination on their sewer would be made at the same time as everybody else in that 1998 annexed area that's not receiving full service would get their determination. And that's where the issue is posed, where if we now pick out a spot and extend the sewer.
Mr. Mayor, these gentlemen were told by officials of the city of Starkville more than one time that sewer would be run to their property if they followed these rules, and they haven't. They've done exactly what the building department and the engineering department said to do, and that's why they're here tonight. And we're told multiple times they would be provided sewer.
Doug?
This is the reason we brought it to the board for approval a couple of meetings ago. You know, I wasn't gonna just do it on my own. I wanted y'all to approve it.
Wait, so the sewer's been approved to this location?
Yeah, the last meeting.
Oh, well, that's a moot point then.
Yeah, this is already approved project.
Okay. The sewer's been approved to this project.
Was it last meeting?
And Mayor, if I might add, that the trigger for extension of services was the subdivision of land, which goes back to the subdivision regulations. So that's why that was triggered. Florida Care wasn't subdividing land, they were making a request. Mr. Richardson was doing a site plan, which wasn't a subdivision, but he was doing a site plan which triggered the sidewalk. That's a different issue, but utilities comes under subdivision regs. And with their application for a final plat, that's what triggered that request for the provision of utilities.
Alderman Vaughn.
I'm trying to figure out how they just slip us by us, and we got other constituents with the same problem that they have. How did we overlook this, and how we let this slip by us? Just like the lady here tonight, some other people on Old West Point Road got the same annexation problem. How did we let this slide by us? It's not fair.
Well, and on the other side of this one, where this is a different scenario than people that are sitting on previously developed land, is you've got a new development, and this is part of the customary package of things that come with a new development. So it's really a quagmire, because if you hold with one standard and say that the full package is delivered to the newly subdivided area, then you are delivering that sewer service to one spot of the previously annexed area without making a determination on the rest of it. On the other hand, if you adhere to the policy that we're going to make a determination on all of it at once, then you're not adhering to the custom of extending sewer to newly developed properties.
Still don't make it right. You got people sitting waiting since 1998, but still don't make it right. Still do not make it right.
And I think we are literally months away from reaching the conclusion on that. And considering that we've only been at this a year, I think that is that's a mighty effort to get something that's been lingering for 12 years decided.
So is number 3 altogether a moot point?
Yes, if there's an order which previously says extended, unless you want to rescind the order, and I would not recommend rescinding the order. That vote is sealed.
So water is to the 2 exterior lots, the middle one. I make a motion that we I make a motion we strike number 3. I may have to reword this motion. We reinstate number 7 and 8, and then delete number 9. So I move to approve the fire station business park, final subdivision plat located northwest of the intersection of Jackson Street and Garrett Road in Ward 6, as proposed, with the
With conditions modified.
with conditions modified.
Delete number 3.
Delete 3, delete number 9, reinstate 7 and 8.
So you're completely deleting the public utilities item?
If that is a moot point,
Well, I don't think public utilities in its entirety is a moot point, is it?
I think there's a motion.
Okay, motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve the Fire Station Business Park final subdivision plat located northwest of the intersection of Jackson Street and Garrett Road in Ward 6 as proposed with conditions as presented, with the exception of conditions number 3 and number 9, and reinstating conditions number 7 and number 8. Is that your motion?
that's correct.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merit?
I do not.
Did you have something, Chris?
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
You came around to it.
So this is
Alderman
saying
Carter.
that they're gonna have to construct a sidewalk, and there will be no, the city won't provide any public utilities? If we're deleting number 3, right?
City already did.
And that's the
Yeah.
question, Ben, that needs to be clarified. Are there any consequences to item number 3 being deleted?
Well, they've basically been met. Potable water's already provided and sanitary sewer services in the works.
Okay. So what Ben's telling you is that condition is irrelevant. All of that's already been done.
City Attorney, you're fine with that?
I am, and that went back to my original question of why are we saying something we may not have to say.
Standard conditions.
Alderman Sistro.
And I have one question. If for some reason this subdivision doesn't go forward, if y'all decide not to go forward with the project, that makes the sewer issue something that's not required anymore and delays that until it's part of the review of the annexed territories.
Well, with the approval of this plat, we're subdividing, correct? I mean, with the approval of this plat tonight, we are subdividing
Is this not part
the
of it?
parcel.
Well, it's final, I'm sorry, I thought it was preliminary.
That's correct.
Never mind.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, will now move into a vote on Alderman Dumas's motion, which is summarizing approval of the plat with items, with conditions 3 and 9 removed, and conditions 7 and 8 reinserted. We'll take this one by roll call. Please answer yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Sistrunk,
Yay.
Alderman Corey,
Yay.
Alderman Perkins,
Yay.
Alderman Bond,
Yay.
Alderman Dumas,
Yay.
Alderman Parker,
Nay.
Alderman Carver,
Aye.
By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda, where is my agenda? Next matter on the agenda is the request for approval to advertise for bids for materials and services to install fire mains and hydrants in northeast Starkville. Mr. Devil.
This was taken off consent, so I'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns that anyone has.
Alderman Vaughn, did you have questions about the project?
Where, northeast of Starkville, where about? That's why we put it on, where about?
Okay, it's, if I could best describe it, if you're to go up North Montgomery Street until you get to Pecan Road, if you're familiar with that area, Pecan Road, then you get Jesse Road, Fanny Dell Road, and then all the way north on Rockville Road to Butler Road, east down Butler Road, and then south on Stowood Road.
Okay. That's what
those
we
are the
wanted.
areas with this
I just
particular-
wanted to know the
Yes, sir.
direction we was going. They just said northeast, and I was.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is this part of the 98 annexed area?
Yes.
Since we've just been through this. with-
Yeah, it is.
With approving something out of sequence in the 98 annexed area.
We've been, this is the last, we're working on Greta Lane right now. We're putting fire hydrants out there, and this is the last area in town that doesn't have hydrants.
So all the other annexed areas do have fire
Except for
hydrants. It's
this
just-
northeast area.
I move approval.
Motion has been made to approve the advertisement for bids for materials and services to install fire mains and hydrants in northeast Starkville. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Thank you, Doug.
And that exhausts the open session portion of our.
Sanitation, oh, it's consent? Okay,
Consent.
never mind.
That will exhaust the open session portion of our agenda. We will now,
Mayor, I move that we go into closed session to make a determination and we can go into executive session.
motion has been made by Alderman Corey to move into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll move to closed session, and we'll take a moment to let the room clear.
I said that.